This is a compilation of over 2 hours of Skyrim companions explained, so sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn. Let's kick things off with what happened to every follower in Skyrim. Skyrim has 66 recruitable followers, and most people could only name one. But the ones nobody talks about are hiding stories so dark, so strange, and so meticulously written that finding them feels like discovering a completely different game. A dog that's secretly half a god, a jester who killed his own mind to survive, a vampire woman who's potentially 5,000 years old and still refuses to talk about it. Today, we're breaking down the most interesting followers Bethesda ever built, who they really are, and what happens to them. Starting with the most famous companion in RPG history, who somehow got there with fewer than 50 lines of dialogue, Lydia. Lydia is the most iconic video game companion ever made, and I can prove it because she has almost zero content. She shows up automatically after you complete Dragon Rising and become Thane of Whiterun. No quest, no backstory, no family, no personal arc. Bethesda gave her fewer than 50 lines of dialogue, all pulled from a generic voice pool shared with dozens of other NPCs. Her voice actress, Colleen Delaney, recorded them the same way she recorded everyone else. But here's where it gets weird. One of those 50 lines became one of the most quoted pieces of video game dialogue in history. "I am sworn to carry your burdens," delivered not with reverence, not with warmth, but with barely hidden exhaustion. Players heard it and immediately loved her for the wrong reasons. That line was supposed to convey duty. What Delaney gave it was passive aggression, and the internet ran with it for over a decade. None of that was planned. What made Lydia stick was something no amount of written lore could manufacture. She could die, not in a scripted cutscene, not behind a quest flag, just dead from a stray arrow or a bad dungeon. The game sends a courier with her inheritance, 300 gold, minus 30 in taxes. Players came back to forums devastated, not because of who Lydia was, but because of how long she had been there. She became iconic through vulnerability. Every other follower on this list has more content, more lore, and more character. None of them hit the same way. But if you think Lydia's story is simple, wait until you meet the follower who is literally too embarrassing for Daedric princes to acknowledge. Barbas. Barbas is the talking dog you meet on the road outside Falkreath, and he seems like a cute little side quest. He is not a cute little side quest. Barbas is a Daedric entity containing approximately half of Clavicus Vile's power, not serving him, not summoned by him, actually part of him, split off and given a dog's body. The lore book, The Vile Truth of Barbas, makes this explicit. The two are consubstantial, the same being divided in two. Merethic-era cave paintings always show them together. Vile himself admits that without Barbas, he would be no more powerful than you. The dog form is deliberate. If Vile had split off an equal, they would scheme against each other constantly. By making his other half a dog, Vile guaranteed he would always be the master. That is what follows you across Skyrim barking at mammoths. But here's where it gets even stranger. Barbas has appeared in every mainline Elder Scrolls game since Redguard, always in a different form. In Morrowind, he was Creeper, the beloved scamp merchant in Caldera who bought your items at full price when every other merchant would lowball you. In Oblivion, he manifested as a dog statuette and prophetically warned you not to retrieve the Umbra Sword. In ESO, he went undercover as a humanoid Scafin infiltrating the Clockwork City. He confirmed the Morrowind identity himself in Oblivion dialogue. The dog you see in Skyrim has been running this game since the Second Era. The quest to reunite him with Vile sends you after the Rueful Axe, created when a wizard wished Vile would end his daughter's lycanthropy. Vile gave him an axe. That is who you are helping patch things up with. If you never finish the quest, Barbas stays with you forever. He is completely invulnerable, takes 0 damage from any source, and does not count toward the follower limit. The trade-off is that he physically shoves you, destroys all stealth, and the vigilance of Stendarr will attack him on sight every time, then die slowly to a dog that cannot be killed. Half a god, stuck in a dog, and still more reliable in a fight than most of the humans on this list. J'zargo. J'zargo is the most arrogant character in Skyrim, and he is completely correct about himself. He is a first-year student at the College of Winterhold when you meet him. His first words to you are not a greeting, they are a threat. He tells you he has heard of you, that you are competition, and that he intends to surpass you. He refers to himself in the third person exclusively. When you become Archmage, the most powerful position in the entire magical hierarchy of Skyrim, J'zargo's response is, J'zargo had expected to be named Archmage, but there is still time. He left Elsewhere because Cyrodiilic mage factions were too busy hoarding secrets to bother teaching. He came to Winterhold because it was isolated, apolitical, and purely dedicated to study. The ambition is legitimate. The ego is earned. His personal quest sends you out to test his experimental Flamecloak scrolls on the undead. Each scroll deals 10 fire damage per second for 30 seconds to everyone nearby, including you. The community has spent years debating whether this was incompetence or J'zargo quietly eliminating his rivals. scrolls. His in-game reaction to the scrolls not working as intended is zero remorse, an immediate pivot to what he will improve next. But here's the thing the game never tells you. J'zargo has no level cap. Every other student at the college caps at level 30. Berlina, Onmund, all of them. J'zargo scales infinitely with the player, reaching 500 plus health and magicka at high levels, making him one of the most powerful followers in the entire base game. The unofficial Skyrim patch flagged this as a bug and capped him at 30. The community revolted. The argument was simple. A character whose entire personality is built around limitless ambition, having a limitless level cap is not an accident. His only real weakness is a persistent bug where he gets stuck casting nothing but sparks regardless of his level. The fix is giving him destruction staves instead of letting him manage his own spells. An infinity scaling Khajiit mage who got patched down by people who clearly never read his dialogue. J'zargo would have something to say about that. Irander is standing in Dawnstar's inn when you find him, trying to calm down terrified townsfolk who haven't slept in weeks. Vermina's skull of corruption is sitting inside a nearby temple, flooding the entire town with nightmares. He wants to destroy it. He needs your help getting inside. What he does not tell you yet is that it is his temple. His real name is Brother Casimir. He was recruited into Vermina's cult as a child, and it was the only home he ever knew. When Orcish raiders attacked Nightcaller Temple, the priests made a decision. Release the miasma, a magical sleeping gas, to put the entire building into stasis and protect the skull. Casimir was chosen to pull the chain. He pulled it. Then, instead of falling asleep with his brothers, he ran. He left them all suspended inside for decades and never came back. A priest of Mara eventually found him wandering, took him in, and gave him a new purpose. He changed his name and spent years trying to be someone worth saving. Coming back to Dawnstar is his penance. The entire dungeon is his confession. You walk through it together and watch him reckon with everything he abandoned. The sleeping cultists, the frozen moment of the attack, the brothers he left behind. And then at the end, Vermina speaks directly to you. Kill Irander now, before he finishes the ritual, because he is going to betray you the moment the skull is free. Take the weapon. He is deceiving you. Here is the thing. She might not be wrong. You have no way to know. You are being asked to trust a man whose defining life choice was abandonment. At the exact moment it costs him the most to follow through. Spare him and the skull is destroyed. Kill him and you get a Daedric artifact. His voice actor, Keith Sarabaika, the same man who voiced Joshua Graham in Fallout, New Vegas, delivers that final stretch with enough genuine weight that most players spare him without thinking twice, which is either a testament to the writing or exactly what Vermina warned you about. Mjol the Lioness. Mjol is Riften's one-woman war against the Thieves Guild, and she is winning by default, because nobody will touch her. She showed up in the city after a dwarven centurion nearly killed her in the ruins of Mazincheleft and left her sword behind. You retrieve it. She becomes a follower, and she spends every waking hour making life miserable for the Blackbriars and the guild they own. She calls them out by name in public. She describes the Thieves Guild as an embarrassment compared to the Dark Brotherhood, which at least follows rules. The guild responds by placing a danger shadow mark next to the house she lives in, and then does absolutely nothing else. She cannot be killed. Not by the guild, not by dragons, not by you. Mjol is one of the only permanently essential followers in the entire game, meaning she drops to one knee when her health runs out and gets back up, forever. You can empty every spell in your inventory into her, and she will stand back up and ask if you need anything. Nobody in Bethesda's files has ever given a clear reason why. The leading community theory is a cut questline that mirrored Destroy the Dark Brotherhood, a full campaign to dismantle the Thieves Guild from the outside that was planned and never shipped. It would have needed a quest giver who could not die. The UESP wiki editors looked through the game data and confirmed there is no obvious explanation for her essential flag. It is just there. Then there is Aaron, the Imperial man who pulled Mjol out of Mazincheleft and has followed her with complete devotion ever since. Marry Mjol and move her to your house. Aaron shows up. Recruit her into the Blades at Skyhaven Temple. Aaron follows and tries to fight dragons with a dagger. Players have reported him appearing dead and naked on the floor of the Temple of Mara mid-wedding ceremony. The unofficial Skyrim patch eventually had to add a script specifically to stop him following her out of Riften. An immortal warrior, a pointless stalker, and a guild that marked her for death and never followed through. Riften, in a nutshell. Ella the Huntress. Ella is a Nord warrior descended from one of Ysgramor's original 500 companions, the legendary army that conquered Skyrim from the Snow Elves, roughly 4,000 years before the events of the game. Her ancestor, Hradi Blackblade, sailed with Ysgramor personally. Her mother was a companion. Her mother's mother, father was a companion. The bloodline runs so deep that joining the circle for Ayla was never really a choice. Her father took her hunting near the Morrowind border as a child. Her mother died before Ayla finished her trial. She grew up and became exactly what her family built her to be, a fierce, skilled hunter in the greatest warrior brotherhood in Skyrim, carrying a lineage that predates the Empire itself. And then she turned down Sovngarde. That is the detail nobody talks about, and it is extraordinary. Every Nord warrior in Skyrim lives and dies for the chance to feast in Sovngarde, the paradise of Talos, the mead hall at the end of the world reserved for the heroic dead. It is the entire foundation of Nord culture. Kodlak Whitemane, the harbinger Ayla, respects and follows more than anyone alive, spends his final days consumed by the fear that his werewolf curse will deny him that afterlife. His last wish is to be cured. Ayla's response, he is wrong, and she will not be cured. She says it directly. She is not worried about some mead-swilling afterlife. She will take the hunt while she is alive, and when she dies, she will go to Hircine's hunting grounds instead, a Daedric prince's realm over the paradise of her own ancestors, chosen deliberately, on the record, with zero regret. After the questline, she is the last werewolf left in the circle. She can also restore your lycanthropy once if you cured yourself, a one-time offer that makes her uniquely important to the werewolf build meta. Her internal class is Thief, which means she tolerates every crime and never abandons you for them. She will walk into a Dark Brotherhood sanctuary without blinking. She provides expert archery training up to level 75, and since she is your follower, you can immediately take the gold back from her inventory after every session. 4,000 years of bloodline, and she traded the afterlife her entire family died reaching for a Daedric hunting trip. Freya. Freya is the shaman's daughter on Solstheim, desperately trying to free her village from Mirak's mind control when you arrive. She guides you through the Temple of Mirak, becomes a permanent follower after you finish the Dragonborn questline, and is mechanically the most powerful companion in vanilla Skyrim by a significant margin. But the reason most players never use her is the same reason she is so easy to underestimate. She is locked behind a late-game DLC, behind a full main questline, behind a speech check. By the time you can recruit her, most runs are already over. That is a genuine loss, because nothing on her character sheet is accidental. Freya is the only follower in the entire game who is both permanently essential and has no level cap. Unkillable and infinitely scaling. She opens every fight by casting Ebony Flesh. She dual wields a Stalrim War Axe and a Nordic War Axe with the dual flurry perk for exceptional attack speed. She heals herself and the player with restoration spells boosted by the regeneration perk, adding 50% effectiveness. She has 20% innate magic resistance on top of all of that. There is no other follower in the base game or either DLC who combines all of those traits at once. But here is what makes Freya actually matter beyond the stat sheet. Her father is Storn Cragstrider, the last Skald shaman, and the man who kept her village sane while Mirak's influence consumed everyone around them. In the final stretch of the Dragonborn questline, Hermaeus Mora demands the Skald's ancient secrets in exchange for the last word of Bendwill. Storn agrees, over Freya's objections. She tells him the book is wrong, that it is against everything he has ever taught her. He tells her the village has to come first. Mora kills him on the spot, impaling him with tentacles while pulling the knowledge out of him, and Freya screams for him to stop with the kind of delivery that makes you put the controller down. She becomes the new shaman. When she sees you next, her warning is quiet. Do not let Mora lead you down the same path as Mirak, the strongest follower in the game, available only after the thing that breaks her. Bethesda buried her, and the community barely noticed. Teldrin Sero. Teldrin Sero is a dark elf mercenary sitting in a corner club in Raven Rock, and he costs 500 gold to hire. He is also, by near unanimous community consensus, the best follower in the game. The hire is straightforward. He introduces himself as the best swordsman in all of Morrowind, which at first sounds like the kind of thing every mercenary says. Then you travel with him for 20 minutes and realize he might not be wrong. His combat style gives you 2 fighters for the price of 1. He opens fights by summoning a flame Atronach. He alternates between destruction spells and swordplay mid-combat. When he takes damage, he heals himself with fast healing and keeps going. His level cap is 60, the highest of any hireling in the game, and he carries the Armsman perk, the only follower in the base game who has it. But what makes Teldrin genuinely remarkable has nothing to do with combat. He has reactive dialogue for almost every major location in Skyrim and Solstheim, not generic comments, specific ones. In Whiterun, he says it does not look like much to him, that Blacklight is a proper city. In Solitude, he calls the East Empire Company heartless bastards. In Riften, he references Glover Mallory by name. He has lines for Windhelm, Morthal, Markarth, Riverwood, Dwemer Ruins, Vampire Lairs, Giant Camps, and your own furnished homes. No other hireling in the game comes close to this volume of world awareness. His backstory comes out in fragments, and it goes darker than expected. He claims to have met St. Geob personally, which would place him well over 200 years old. He spent time in Windhelm's Grey Quarter, which he describes as a wretched place full of bitter Dunmer. His last employer's story is the most memorable. A tattooed Nord with an insatiable bloodlust tracked a single fleeing bandit for 3 days, arriving at a massive encampment. The Nord turned to Teldrin with the most menacing grin he had ever seen. Teldrin left immediately. No amount of gold was worth whatever was about to happen next. He came back to Solstheim and has been at the retching Netch ever since. If you dismiss him, he offers to rejoin for free, because he was enjoying the travels. His chitin helmet never comes off. The only way to see his face is the perfect touch pickpocket perk. The community spent years trying. He is exactly as handsome as you would expect from someone who talks like that. Cicero. Cicero is the cackling jester you meet on the road near Lorius Farm, begging for help with a broken wagon carrying a coffin he calls his mother. He is dressed in motley. He speaks in rhymes, and he seems like comic relief. He is the most tragic character in Skyrim, and the journals prove it. 5 volumes of Cicero's diary document one of gaming's most complete descents into madness, written in real time. In 4E186, he arrives at the Cheydinhal Sanctuary as a lucid, professional assassin. His prose is clear. His kills are methodical. He notes the ghosts of a past purification still haunting the halls, a direct callback to the events of Oblivion's Dark Brotherhood questline. In 4E187, he assassinates the Grand Champion of the Imperial Arena by posing as a starstruck fan, a deliberate echo of Oblivion's adoring fan. Then the Brotherhood starts dying. Members disappear one by one. By 4E189, his last contract targets a jester, whose laughter and screams Cicero documents with clinical precision. By 4E190, alone in the sanctuary with only the Night Mother's corpse, the murdered jester's laughter starts echoing back to him from the walls. He writes it down without alarm. By 4E192, it is complete. Cicero is dead. Cicero is born. The laughter has filled him. He is the jester now. His writing shifts from professional prose into rhyming couplets. He is wearing the dead man's clothes. He has adopted the dead man's identity as a full psychological replacement for 15 years of total isolation. The 40-plus skulls found in the Dawnstar Sanctuary belong to the years in between. Here is the thing the community has argued about since launch. Cicero was right. Astrid, the woman who actually runs the Brotherhood when you find it, betrays the entire organization to the Penitus Oculatus. She violates every one of the 5 tenets in the process and gets almost everyone killed. Cicero was the only member who saw it coming and stayed loyal to the old ways. His attack on Astrid was violent, but technically correct. Sparing him at the Dawnstar Sanctuary gives you the most lore-consistent outcome and the strongest one-handed follower in the game. His one-handed skill sits at 100, the highest of any companion. His voice actor, Andy Morris, is one of gaming's genuine mysteries. No photos exist, no interviews, no social media. His only other known credits are Emperor Tachyon in Ratchet and Clank and a minor role in Psychonauts. Fans have tracked down every other Skyrim voice actor's identity. Andy Morris simply does not have one on record. A jester with no face behind the mask. Fitting. Serena. Serana is technically a temporary quest follower. She accompanies you through the entire Dawnguard main questline and then becomes a permanent companion afterward. But calling her temporary is like calling the ocean a puddle with ambition, because Bethesda built an entirely separate AI system just for her that no other follower in the game has. Every other companion in Skyrim runs on the same basic framework. Serana runs on a custom papyrus script called DLC1NPC mental model, which tracks your conversational choices and adjusts her available dialogue permanently based on what you say. Push too hard about curing her vampirism early in the questline, and she locks that conversation out forever. The variable is named Cutoff Cure Discussion, and it stays set. The only way to reverse it is a console command. She remembers. She has 541 hit points, the highest health of any follower in the game. She mines ore unprompted. She chops firewood. She uses crafting stations. She dances at taverns. She wears a hood outside because her skin burns in sunlight. She reanimates nearby corpses through walls because she cannot help herself, destroying every lootable body in a dungeon by turning it to ash before you get there. Her necromancy habit has ruined more playthroughs than any enemy in the game. Her backstory is the darkest thing in the franchise. Her family underwent a direct ritual with Molag Bal to become pure-blooded vampire lords. The title given to women who survive it, Daughter of Cold Harbor, carries implications the game never states directly but makes unmistakable. Serana describes the ritual only as degrading and says she did not have a choice. voice. When her father Harkon discovered a prophecy requiring her sacrificial blood to blot out the sun, her mother Valerica sealed her inside Dim Hollow Crypt and fled to the Soul Cairn. When Serana wakes up and asks if Cyrodiil is still the seat of an empire, she is not making small talk. She has never heard of the empire. It was founded in 1E143. The Dwemer disappeared in 1E700. She wakes up confused that their ruins need maintenance. The community has spent years debating exactly how old that makes her. The answer is somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 years, and Bethesda has never confirmed it. She cannot be married even after you cure her vampirism. When you try, she cites a complicated history with temples. The subtext is not subtle. The Serana Dialogue add-on mod, adding over 7,000 voiced lines to expand her relationship content, became one of the most downloaded Skyrim mods ever made. An AI-voiced version using her actual voice actress Laura Bailey's voice was later removed from Nexus after Bailey objected to her performance being replicated without consent. 14 years later, players are still trying to give her a better ending than the one she got. Skyrim has over 60 women you can marry, but let's be honest, most of them are glorified merchants who cook you breakfast and stand in your house. The ones that actually matter? There are 8. Today, we're ranking all of them, from the one who comes with a roommate you never asked for to the vampire princess. The entire community has been trying to marry for 14 years. Let's start at the bottom, the love triangle. Camilla Valerius is one of the first people you ever meet in Skyrim, and she might be the most dramatic. She co-runs the Riverwood Trader with her brother Lucan, having traveled all the way from Cyrodiil looking for a better life. She arrived in the middle of a civil war, which she sums up with zero hesitation. So what did I get? Another war. From minute 1, she's restless and trapped, and she knows it. She's also the center of Skyrim's most famous love triangle. Both Faendal, the wood elf archer, and Sven, the local bard, are obsessed with her. Both of them separately approach the Dragonborn and ask you to deliver a forged letter, each one trying to sabotage the other. It's one of the pettiest things in the entire game, and Camilla has zero idea any of it is happening. But here's the thing. If you skip all of that and marry Camilla yourself, you're not escaping the drama. You're inheriting it. Because Faendal, even after losing the girl, will periodically visit your home to see her. Doesn't matter where you live. Doesn't matter how far away you move her. Faendal will show up. Players have come home to find him walking out of the bedroom. The community's solution? Almost universally, is murder. Sacrifice him at Boethia's shrine, recruit him into the Blades, and let a dragon handle it, or just stab him in the street. Problem solved. There's also this. Camilla will hire thugs to attack you for stealing, even after she's dead. Even if she's your wife, the contract outlives her. She can't follow you into combat. She brings the same 100 gold a day as every other merchant wife, and her lore is more entertaining than it is deep. She ranks at number 8, not because she's boring, but because every single wife on this list does more. The story surrounding her is genuinely fun. Camilla herself just doesn't do enough. But if you think the love triangle drama ends with her, wait until you hear about the wife who comes with an actual permanent roommate who never leaves, the assassin's wife. Muri is the only wife on this list who hired someone to kill 2 people before she ever met you. She's a Breton alchemist working at a shop called the Hag's Cure in Markarth, and her backstory is one of the darkest in the entire game. She grew up in Windhelm, essentially adopted by the wealthy Shattershield family, best friends with their daughter Nilsine. Then a man named Alain Dufont came into her life. He romanced her, got close to the grieving family through her, stole their prized family heirloom, and disappeared. The Shattershields blamed Muri, accused her of being his accomplice, threw her out of Windhelm with nothing. So she performed the Black Sacrament. She built an effigy out of bones and nightshade and called for the Dark Brotherhood. And when you show up as the assassin sent to fulfill her contract, her reaction is one of the best moments in the game. She genuinely didn't believe it would work. The Dark Brother, my goodness, you're really here. Her primary target is Alain Dufont, but she offers you a bonus. Kill Nilsine Shattershield too, her former best friend, the one who turned on her. Complete both hits and she rewards you with Muri's ring, which makes every potion you create 15% more powerful. For alchemy builds, that ring is genuinely exceptional. Here's where it gets complicated. She can only be married after completing her quest, which requires joining the Dark Brotherhood. Destroy the Brotherhood instead, and she's locked off entirely. She has no follower capability. She stands in her shop, she cooks you meals, she generates gold. That's it. But the community loves her because she fits perfectly. If you're playing an assassin, if you're deep in the Dark Brotherhood questline, Muri makes complete narrative sense as the woman waiting at home. The moral ambiguity of the whole arrangement is the point. She ranks at 7. Compelling story, real depth, just not enough utility to climb higher. The sweet roll dealer. Isolde looks like the most innocent person in Skyrim. She is not. On the surface, she's everything you'd want. Warm, ambitious, standing in the Whiterun marketplace with a dream of buying the local tavern and becoming the greatest trader in Skyrim. Her parents are dead. She promised them she'd make something of herself. She's one of the only Nords in the game who actively defends the Khajiit caravans when everyone else treats them like criminals. She's friendly, she's accessible, and marrying her requires exactly one thing: bring her a mammoth tusk. That's the whole quest. No dungeon, no boss fight, no moral dilemma. Just a tusk. But here's the kicker. Travel to Sleeping Tree Cave, find the body of an orc named Ulag, and loot the note on his corpse. It's addressed to him from Isolde. She's been running a supply deal with a wanted skooma criminal to harvest sleeping tree sap, the most powerful hallucinogenic substance in Skyrim, and sell it from her market stall in Whiterun, right next to the produce. When you find her and confront her, she is completely unbothered. She offers you the same deal, 150 gold per bottle. She also shows up in A Night to Remember, the Daedric quest where you piece together what you did while blackout drunk. One of the answers? You bought a wedding ring from Isolde for a Hagraven. She sold it without a single question. The community has debated for years whether Isolde is actually aware that sleeping tree sap is essentially a drug, or if she's just a ruthless entrepreneur who genuinely doesn't care what she's selling. Either reading makes her more interesting than she appears. Practically, she's one of the best early game choices. She's in Whiterun, which you visit in the first hour. The tusk is easy to get. She opens a shop, generates gold daily, and cooks you meals. She can't fight, she won't follow you anywhere, but she doesn't need to. She ranks at 6. The secret criminal enterprise just below a cheerful surface is exactly the kind of hidden depth that keeps people talking about this game 14 years later. The nervous genius. Brelina Marion is the only wife on this list who will accidentally turn you into a horse. She's a Dunmer student at the College of Winterhold, and the moment you meet her, she's already on the defensive. Her opening line is essentially a preemptive shutdown. Before you even ask, yes, I have an ancestry steeped in magic, and no, I don't want to talk about it. Then, she immediately apologizes for snapping at you. That tension between pride and anxiety is her entire personality, and it's written better than most companion characters in games twice this budget. The ancestry she doesn't want to talk about is House Telvanni. If you know Elder Scrolls lore, that means something. House Telvanni is one of Morrowind's most powerful great houses, famous for isolationist wizard lords who live in giant mushroom towers and answer to nobody. They almost never leave Morrowind. Brelina is the first Telvanni to do so in a very long time, and she carries the weight of that. The family expectation is enormous. She came to Winterhold specifically to get away from it. I just want to learn. I don't want to think about what's expected of me. Her quest, Brelina's practice, is what makes the community love her. After Under Sarthal, she asks to test a spell on you. Nothing dangerous, she promises. Her first attempt turns your vision green. She's horrified. Confident she's fixed it, she tries again. You become a horse, then a cow, then a dog. Each transformation more ridiculous than the last, Brelina getting progressively more mortified. This really isn't turning out the way I'd hoped. She eventually fixes it, hands you a resist magic necklace, and asks you to never speak of it again. But here's where she separates from the previous 3 wives. Brelina is an actual follower with real combat utility. She casts armor buff spells before a fight, summons flame Atronax to tank for her, and fires destruction magic at range. She levels alongside you up to 30 and can be recruited into the Blades or serve as a steward for a Hearthfire home. She brings something to the table beyond a daily income and a cooked meal. She ranks at 5. The lore is rich, the quest is charming, the utility is real. She loses points only because the 4 women ahead of her are genuinely exceptional. The burden bearer. Lydia is not the best wife in Skyrim. She might be the most important character in it. She's assigned to you by Jarl Balgruuf after Dragon Rising, typically within the first 2 hours of the game. Your housecarl, sworn to your service. And within minutes of meeting her, you open her inventory to drop off some loot, and she delivers the line, I am sworn to carry your burdens. Flat, deadpan, dripping with sarcasm she technically isn't supposed to have. That one sentence became one of the most recognizable NPC quotes in gaming history, spawned the scumbag Lydia meme, and launched a Nexus mod specifically designed to stop her from saying it. The mod is called Lydia is Less Sarcastic. It has thousands of downloads. GameRant once asked why Skyrim has 66 followers, but you can only ever remember Lydia. The answer is that she arrived first. She's the tutorial for the entire follower system, introduced by name during a cutscene when every other housecarl just appears in a room. Most players never look for anyone else, but Lydia is genuinely good beyond the meme. She caps at level 50 with heavy armor, and block both maxed at 100, one-handed at 83. She's a pure melee tank who charges into everything and keeps enemies off you. The problem is she also charges into your arrows, walks into trap triggers, and falls off cliffs with alarming regularity. She is not essential. She can die. She does die. A Reddit thread asking players to share their Lydia death stories received over 3,000 2,600 responses. Players have found her corpse at their own wedding, crashing the ceremony and forcing a restart. The doorway blocking is its own chapter. She plants herself in door frames and refuses to move regardless of how urgently you need through. The community solution is unrelenting force. This became a meme faster than Bethesda could patch anything. She was originally bugged and couldn't be married at all. Patch 1.5.24 fixed it. The Dragonborn DLC gave her new lines, including "What next? Carnivorous rabbits," while fighting Reeklings, which is frankly perfect. She's appeared in Elder Scrolls Legends and Elder Scrolls Castles. She's bigger than the game she came from. Lydia ranks at 4. Not because she's the most useful, not because her lore runs the deepest, but because she is the reason most people have any attachment to this system at all. Every wife ranked above her is standing on her shoulders. If you think one sarcastic housecarl is a lot to deal with, wait until you hear about the wife who brings an entire man with her, the indestructible Paladin. Mjol the Lioness is the best tank in Skyrim. She also comes with a man named Aaron who will live in your house forever. Her backstory earns every bit of the title. When she was a child, bandits burned her village to the ground and murdered her brother while she watched. She describes it once plainly, with zero self-pity. "Do you know, I actually saw one laugh as he ran my brother through." Her father was a hunter. Her mother taught her sword fighting. She grew up, became an adventurer, and spent years traveling all of Tamriel. Eventually, she walked into the Dwemer ruin Mazincheleft and nearly got killed by a dwarven centurion. She lost her sword, a glass blade called Grimsever, and crawled out, barely alive. A man named Aaron found her dying on the road outside Riften, brought her into his home, and nursed her back to health. He told her about the corruption rotting the city from the inside, the Thieves Guild, the Blackbriar family's stranglehold on every institution. And Mjol, recovered and furious, swore to protect Riften as a one-woman crusade against all of it. To marry her, you have to be at least level 14 and retrieve Grimsever from Mazincheleft. Her reaction when you return it is one of the most genuinely warm moments in the game. She becomes a follower immediately and stays with you permanently. Here's what makes Mjol unique among every follower in Skyrim. She is flagged as permanently essential. She cannot die, not from enemies, not from traps, not from you accidentally hitting her with a shout. No other non-quest critical follower has this. At level 40, she sits at 580 health, with both heavy armor and two-handed maxed at 100. She is an indestructible wall that will outlast everything. But Aaron comes with her. He follows Mjol everywhere due to a follow package in his AI. When you marry her and move her to your home, he moves in too. He stands in your kitchen. He watches her sleep. He blocks doorways. He has 2 lines of dialogue. The community solution is almost always murder, executed carefully so Mjol doesn't witness it. The unofficial Skyrim patch removes his follow script entirely. Without it, he stays in Riften where he belongs. With it, he is your roommate indefinitely. There's also a shadow mark from the Thieves Guild on Aaron's house in Riften. The mark means danger. The guild knows Mjol is a threat. They just never do anything about it, which is its own kind of commentary on how effective the guild actually is. Mjol ranks at 3. The lore is tragic and rich. The combat utility is unmatched, and the Aaron situation is the most uniquely Skyrim problem any wife on this list creates. The top 2 are in a different league entirely. The Huntress. Isla the Huntress is the wife most Skyrim players end up with, and she earned it in a way nobody else on this list comes close to matching. Her family line traces back to Hrodi Blackblade, one of Ysgramor's original 500 companions who sailed from Atmora to Tamriel in the Merethic era. Her grandmother was a companion. Her mother was a companion. Her mother died before seeing Ayla join, which is the detail that quietly drives everything about her. Ma didn't live long enough to see me join, but I fight to honor her and all my shield sisters through time. She grew up in the wilds with her father, who raised her as a hunter. That's where the archery comes from. That's where everything comes from. She's one of 5 members of the Circle, the companion's secret inner sanctum. All 5 are werewolves. What separates Ayla from every other Circle member is that she is the only one who refuses to cure her lycanthropy, ever. Kodlak wants to be free of it. Vilkas tolerates it. Ayla sees it as a gift from her scene, and treats anyone who disagrees as simply wrong. Her relationship with fellow Circle member Skjor is implied to be romantic, the 2 of them hunting together as wolves on the plains outside Whiterun at night. His death at the Silverhand's hands is the moment her character shifts from confident to dangerous. You first see her at Pelagia Farm just outside Whiterun, fighting a giant alongside Farkas and Rhea. It's one of the earliest memorable moments in the game. If you help, she acknowledges you. If you stand there watching, she has 0 patience. Ha! Another milk drinker crying about his effort. Glory only awaits those who triumph. To marry her, you have to complete the entire companion's questline through Glory of the Dead. Every mission, no shortcuts. That requirement is exactly why she ranks this high. She is the only wife on this list who actively makes you work for her through a full, meaningful story. You don't bring her a tusk. You don't retrieve a sword. You fight alongside her, watch her grieve Skjor, journey into Ysgramor's tomb, and earn her respect over the course of a complete questline. The practical benefits match the lore. She caps at level 50 with archery near 100 and sneak at 97, the highest of any non-DLC follower in the game. She offers expert archery training up to level 75 after marriage, and because she's your follower, you can pay for training and take the gold straight back from her inventory. Essentially free skill gains for as long as you want. She also tolerates every crime without leaving your service, and in Dawnguard she can restore your lycanthropy one additional time if you cured it. The community has loved her since 2011 and never stopped. She appears at the top of nearly every best wives ranking ever written. She is the standard every other follower wife gets measured against, but she's not number one. The one you can't have. Serana is the best companion Bethesda has ever written. She is also in vanilla Skyrim completely impossible to marry, and the community has spent 14 years trying to fix that. She's a pure-blood vampire roughly 4,000 to 5,000 years old, daughter of Lord Harkon, leader of the Volkihar clan. Her title is Daughter of Cold Harbor, which means she became a vampire through a ritual involving Molag Bal, the Daedric Prince of Domination. The lore around what that ritual actually involves is dark enough that Serana describes it only as unpleasant and emotionally scarring, and refuses to say anything more. She is so ancient she predates the Cyrodiilic Empire. When she wakes up and learns that Cyrodiil is now the seat of an empire, she's genuinely confused. She missed thousands of years of history sealed in a sarcophagus inside Dimhollow Crypt. Her mother put her there, without her consent, to protect her from a prophecy that required the sacrifice of a daughter of Cold Harbor to blot out the sun. Her father wanted to use her. Her mother hid her away without asking. Both parents treated her as a piece in their war, and her arc through the Dawnguard questline is the gradual realization of exactly that. She ends it by helping you kill her own father. That's the emotional weight Serana is carrying across every conversation she has with the Dragonborn. She is voiced by Laura Bailey, who gives a performance that makes every other follower in the game sound like they're reading off a cue card. The creation kit reveals she has 2 complete sets of dialogue, warmer versions that only trigger as her disposition rises. The progression from guarded and wary to genuinely warm is earned over dozens of hours, and it feels real. If you propose to her with the Amulet of Mara, she refuses. Even walking near a temple scares me. This doesn't change if you cure her vampirism. She is simply not in the marriage faction, and Bethesda never changed it. The community's response was immediate and has never stopped. The mod Marry Me Serana has over 16,000 endorsements on Nexus Mods. Serana Dialogue add-on adds over 7,000 new voiced lines, a full romance questline with actual dates, gift-giving, and custom commentary across the entire game. It was covered by Forbes magazine. A mod for a 13-year-old game got a Forbes write-up because people wanted to marry this character that badly. Her combat utility matches her lore depth. She levels to 50 with the highest health pool of any follower, complete frost and disease immunity, and a spell kit that scales from basic Ice Spike all the way to Chain Lightning and Ice Storm at max level. She will also, when no better option exists, reanimate dead chickens to fight alongside her. Glowing purple zombie chickens charging a giant is the most Serana experience possible, and it is perfect. She ranks at number 1 not just because of what she is in the game, but because of what she represents outside it. Bethesda built a companion so compelling that the entire community refused to accept she wasn't marriageable, built the tools to fix it themselves, and kept adding to those tools for over a decade. That's not a ranking, that's a verdict. Everyone assumes the last Dragonborn is the most beloved Elder Scrolls protagonist because Skyrim sold 60 million copies, but he's not even close. The actual fan favorite is a character most casual players have never heard of, and today we're ranking all 6 main protagonists from most forgotten to most loved based on actual community sentiment, starting with a hero so invisible that even hardcore fans forget he exists. The Eternal Champion. The very first Elder Scrolls protagonist is also the most forgotten. His name was Talon. He was an apprentice studying sorcery under Rhea Silmaine at the Imperial Court when everything went wrong. The Imperial battle mage Jagar Tharn murdered both Silmaine and imprisoned Emperor Uriel Septim VII in a pocket dimension of oblivion, then threw Talon into the Imperial dungeons as the last living witness. Here's where it gets interesting. Silmaine's ghost contacted Talon from beyond death and guided him on a quest that lasted an entire decade, 10 years. From 3E 389 to 3E 399, the Eternal Champion traveled across every province of Tamriel collecting 8 pieces of the Staff of Chaos from 16 different dungeons. But Tharn had drained the staff's power into the Jewel of Fire, basically turning himself into a lich. In the final battle beneath the Imperial Palace, Talon used the reassembled staff to drain the jewel and disintegrate Tharn into ash. The Emperor was freed. Talon received the title Eternal Champion and was promised he would rule by the Emperor's side. And that makes him unique among every protagonist because he had 0 special powers. No prophecy, no dragon blood, no divine blessing. He was literally just the last person alive who knew the truth. The unchosen one who spent a full decade fixing everything manually, but nobody remembers him. Walk into any Elder Scrolls discussion, and the Eternal Champion generates exactly 0 conversation. Arena came out in 1994, and the game was never supposed to be an RPG. It was designed as a gladiatorial combat game, where you'd fight across arenas until becoming Grand Champion in the Imperial City. The RPG side quests became more engaging during development, so they dropped the arena concept entirely. Lead developer Vijay Lakshman spent 1 month writing what he described as 5 books worth of narrative content, and the protagonist had almost no characterization by design. The cultural legends surrounding the Eternal Champion are fascinatingly contradictory. Nords claim he was a king's son. Dunmers say she was a daughter of Almalexia. Bosmer call her an Ayleid descendant. Vampire clans insist the champion was a vampire from beyond Nirn. Nobody knows who Talon actually was because the game gave you complete freedom to be anyone. Here's the problem. Arena is 30 years old. Almost nobody in the modern fanbase has played it. In every Reddit poll, every tier list, every forum ranking, the Eternal Champion lands dead last. The most affectionate comment you'll find is from an ESO forum user who said, "Every time you're struggling with your PUG and Crypts of Hearts, remember the Eternal Champion soloed all of them." That's it. That's the peak of his cultural relevance. Even Alduin's Wall in Skyrim prophesied the events of Arena as the first event, confirming the Imperial Simulacrum's cosmic significance. The champion themselves vanished from history completely. Despite the Emperor's promise of shared rulership, Talon never appears again in any game, any book, any reference. He saved the entire empire and became a historical footnote. The most important thing the Eternal Champion did was start a franchise. Everything after that belongs to someone else. The Agent, the hero of Daggerfall, triggered one of the most reality-breaking events in Elder Scrolls history, and almost nobody knows it happened. Born in 3E 375, the Agent was a Blades operative sent by Emperor Uriel Septim VII to the Iliac Bay with 2 missions. Investigate the ghost of King Lysandus haunting the streets of Daggerfall, and recover a compromising personal letter the Emperor had written to Queen Minnesera. The Agent's ship wrecked on the Western Cliffs, and here's what makes them unique. They're the only Elder Scrolls protagonist who escaped their opening prison without supernatural help. No guiding ghost like the Eternal Champion. No Emperor opening your cell like the hero of Kvatch. No dragon attack like the Dragonborn. Just privateers, a cave, and your own ability to survive. What the Agent uncovered was a web of political intrigue involving 7 factions all fighting over the same artifact, the Totem of Tiber Septim. This thing controlled the Numidium, the colossal Dwemer brass golem that Tiber Septim used to conquer all of Tamriel. Emperor Uriel wanted it. 3 kings wanted it. The orc leader Gortwag Gro Nagorm wanted it to legitimize Orsinium. Manamarco, the king of worms, wanted it for necromantic power. And the Underking, Zurin Arctus, Tiber Septim's former battle mage, wanted his soul back from the Mantella powering the machine. Daggerfall shipped with 6 mutually exclusive endings. You could give the totem to any of these factions. And instead of picking one as canon, Bethesda made all of them happen simultaneously through a dragon break, a rupture in the fabric of time itself. During 2 days in 3E 417, every faction activated the Numidium at once. Time became non-linear. Minutes lasted years. Whole armies teleported hundreds of miles. A Blades agent had her eyes burned from their sockets just witnessing it. The 44 independent kingdoms of the Iliac Bay consolidated into 4: Daggerfall, Sentinel, Wayrest, and Orsinium. Manamarco ascended to godhood and became a constellation. The Underking reclaimed his soul and finally died. Reality broke and repaired itself in a way that made every player choice canon. The Agent themselves may have been killed by the Numidium. The Blades never contacted them again. Lore suggests they died during the warp in the west, erased by the same temporal event they caused. The Dragon Break concept was created by developer Ted Peterson specifically to solve the sequel problem, but Bruce Nesmith, who later became Skyrim's lead designer, publicly expressed regret about it. He said the Dragon Break could have been handled better, which is fascinating because lore fans consider it one of the most brilliant narrative devices in the entire franchise. The idea that multiple contradictory timelines can all be simultaneously true is peak Elder Scrolls metaphysics. A cut feature would have let you import your arena character, making the agent and Eternal Champion the same person. Bethesda confirmed they're canonically separate individuals. Community sentiment mirrors the Eternal Champion's obscurity, but slightly warmer. One ESO forum user summarized it perfectly. The agent of Daggerfall was in the right places at the right times. That's about it. Reddit discussions routinely dismiss them. In power rankings, the agent places above the Eternal Champion solely because they controlled the Numidium, however, briefly. Their story is the most politically sophisticated of any protagonist, but it reads like a history textbook rather than a character arc. The agent caused the warp in the West and then vanished, possibly atomized by their own success. But if you think breaking reality is impressive, wait until you meet the protagonist who beat a Daedric prince in his own realm while technically being undead. The Vestige. The Vestige has accomplished more than every other Elder Scrolls protagonist combined, and the community does not care at all. Set in 2E582, roughly 800 years before Skyrim, the Vestige was a mortal who got murdered by the necromancer Mannimarco as a sacrifice to Molag Bal, the Daedric prince of domination. Their soul was ripped out, and they were thrown into the Wailing Prison in Cold Harbor, the literal plane of oblivion ruled by the King of Rape. Here's where the metaphysics get weird. When a mortal's soul is replaced by a Daedric vestige, they reform from chaotic creatia, called azure plasm. Most soul shriven become degraded copies that slowly lose their minds. But the vestige possessed an anuic aspect, an intrinsic connection to the forces of creation that produced a perfect duplicate. They kept their memories, their personality, their appearance, and gained functional immortality. Every time they die, they reform at a way shrine. Even after recovering their soul later, their body remains azure plasm. They are technically a form of Daedra with a mortal soul grafted back in. That has never happened before in Elder Scrolls lore. The accomplishment list is absurd. The Vestige reunited the 5 companions, retrieved the Amulet of Kings, got imbued with Akatosh's divine power, and defeated Molag Bal in personal combat inside Cold Harbor. They forced a Daedric prince to release all stolen souls. Then, across years of DLC content, they stopped Nocturnal from seizing control of the entire multiverse, battled dragons and elsewhere, confronted Mehrunes Dagon, faced the forgotten Daedric prince Athalia, who recognized them as a pathwalker, and saved Tamriel approximately 17 different times. One fandom user ranked the Vestige as the second strongest protagonist. He defeated Molag Bal in his own realm using the Amulet of Kings. He defeated Nocturnal when she was literally trying to become ruler of the Elder Scrolls multiverse. By feat count alone, the Vestige should dominate every power ranking, but nobody loves them. The problem is ESO, the inherent MMO problem. Thousands of simultaneous vestiges running around conflicts with the Elder Scrolls tradition of a singular prisoner hero. NPCs call the Vestige mercenary or traveler regardless of accomplishments. The character shows no memory of previous quests across DLCs. Game director Rich Lambert acknowledged the rough 2014 launch. We didn't have an identity. The protagonist felt generic, and the game struggled to capture the single-player experience. Community pushback is brutal. Critics note the Vestige needed external divine power for every major fight. The Amulet of Kings against Molag Bal, Meridia's Blessing in Cold Harbor. They don't have innate abilities like Dragon Souls or CHIM or the Mantella. A common sentiment? They're the most powerful errand runner in Tamriel. The Vestige lacks distinctive memes, iconic moments, or a recognizable visual identity. You cannot picture the Vestige's face because they don't have one. The split is clean. The ESO community respects the resume. Single-player fans dismiss the character entirely. The Vestige is respected more than loved, defined by volume rather than personality. They saved the world more times than anyone else and generated less fan art than a mud crab, but at least the Vestige's accomplishments are debatable. The next protagonist conquered pop culture so completely that casual fans assume he's the franchise, while lore purists call him the most boring hero Bethesda ever wrote, the last Dragonborn. No Elder Scrolls protagonist is more famous than the Dovahkiin. Skyrim sold over 60 million copies. The horned helmet is recognizable to people who have never touched a video game. Fuz Roda became one of gaming's most iconic catchphrases within days of the November 2011 launch, and the lore-focused Elder Scrolls community thinks he's kinda boring. The last Dragonborn is a mortal blessed with the blood and soul of a dragon by Akatosh. They can absorb dragon souls, learn Thuum shouts instinctively, and their prophecies answered, Alduin the World Eater returning to destroy the world. The name Dovahkiin parses as Dov-Akin, born hunter of dragonkind. They're the first Dragonborn since Tiber Septim to be summoned by the Greybeards, who named them Izmir, Dragon of the North, the same title held by the man who became the god Talos. The The story hits every epic fantasy beat. The Helgen dragon attack during a near execution. The first dragon kill outside Whiterun, where guards witness soul absorption in absolute awe. The climb to High Hrothgar. The revelation that Paarthurnax, the Greybeard's leader, is a dragon who once served Alduin. The journey to Sovngarde to fight Alduin alongside 3 ancient Nord heroes. It's a straightforward hero's journey with dragons, and it works. The Dawnguard DLC introduces Serana, voiced by Laura Bailey, one of gaming's most beloved companion characters, and the vampire Lord Harkon's plot to blot out the sun using Ariel's bow. The Dragonborn DLC pits the hero against Miraak, the first Dragonborn in Hermaeus Mora's realm of Apocrypha. And here's the dark implication. Mora calls the last Dragonborn his new champion at the end, suggesting eventual servitude to the Daedric Prince of forbidden knowledge. That's the implied fate. Eternal slavery to an eldritch horror. Todd Howard's design philosophy centered on simplicity. The dragon concept had a 1-page design document. Howard wanted to eliminate the restart problem from Oblivion, where players would spend 3 hours, think I chose wrong, and start over. Skyrim lets you play first and develop naturally. Any race can be Dragonborn. Howard cheerfully noted you can be an Argonian lizard who is Dragonborn. The cultural impact is staggering. Fus Ro Dah spawned thousands of videos. I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee, deliberately written by Emil Pagliarulo to give guards personality. Spawned t-shirts, tattoos, references in The Simpsons and NCIS, and has its own Wikipedia page. The opening cart scene, "Hey you, you're finally awake," became a meme format that lasted a decade. The stealth archer phenomenon, every player defaulting to sneak archer regardless of intended build, became a beloved community joke. Skyrim is everywhere. The Dragonborn is an icon, but in lore-focused communities, the Dragonborn takes a beating. The criticism is consistent, generic chosen one, where the Nerevarine had to politically maneuver across great houses and Ashlander tribes, actively earning the title through ambiguous prophecy fulfillment. The Dragonborn simply is Dragonborn, discovered passively when a dragon dies near Whiterun. You absorb the soul and guards go, "You're Dragonborn, you didn't do anything. You were born special." A Reset-era user captured the sentiment perfectly. What I took from this thread is basically it's just a fight between Nerevarine and COC. Dragonborn is a jobber. The implied fate of servitude to Hermaeus Mora feels ignoble compared to becoming a god of madness or sailing to an uncharted continent. Fans love Skyrim the game more than they love the Dragonborn the character. The protagonist is a vehicle for the player to experience dragons, not a compelling figure in their own right. The Dragonborn conquered pop culture and lost the hardcore fanbase. But if you think that's a harsh judgment, wait until you meet the protagonist who went from literal nobody to a Daedric prince, the hero of Kvatch. The hero of Kvatch has the most satisfying character arc in the entire franchise. They start as an anonymous prisoner with 0 special powers, and end as a Daedric prince, 0 to god of madness. Nobody else comes close to that trajectory. They begin in the Imperial City dungeon where Emperor Uriel Septim VII, fleeing Mythic Dawn assassins through an escape route that happens to pass through their cell, recognizes them from prophetic dreams. Before dying, Uriel entrusts them with the Amulet of Kings, and the task of finding his secret illegitimate son, Martin Septim. That's it. That's the entire qualification. The Emperor had a dream about you. The brilliant narrative choice is positioning the hero as a supporting character to Martin's story. Martin is the true savior, a humble priest of Akatosh, who discovers he's the Emperor's heir. The hero enables everything, closing the first Oblivion Gate at Kvatch, which earns them their title, gathering allies for the Siege of Bruma, infiltrating the Mythic Dawn cult, retrieving the amulet from Mankar Cameron's pocket dimension of paradise. The hero does the work, while Martin becomes the legend. In the climax, Mehrunes Dagon physically manifests in the Imperial City, his full body, a Daedric prince walking through the streets of the capital destroying everything. Martin shatters the Amulet of Kings, becoming an avatar of Akatosh, a colossal dragon god who defeats Dagon and is permanently transformed into a stone statue in the Temple of the One. The Septim bloodline ends forever. Martin's last words to the hero, the shape of the future, the fate of the Empire, these things now belong to you. And then, the Shivering Isles. DLC elevates everything. The hero enters Sheogorath's realm of madness to stop the Grey March, a cyclical destruction by Jiggalag, the Daedric Prince of Order. Here's the backstory. Jiggalag was so powerful that the other Daedric princes feared him and cursed him to become the thing he hated most, Sheogorath, the embodiment of chaos and madness. At the end of every era, Jiggalag breaks free, destroys the Shivering Isles as the Grey March, and then transforms back into Sheogorath with no memory of what happened, an eternal cycle. The hero defeats Jiggalag in combat and inherits the mantle of Sheogorath through a process called mantling. In Elder Scrolls Metaphysics, Mantling is when a mortal becomes indistinguishable from a god by perfectly embodying them. The hero of Kvatch literally becomes a Daedric prince, and Skyrim confirms it. During the Mind of Madness quest, Sheogorath references events only the hero would know. Butterflies, blood, a fox, a severed head, oh, and the cheese. The Shivering Isles entrance involved butterflies, the Grey Fox from the Thieves Guild questline, Mathieu Bellamont's mother's severed head from the Dark Brotherhood, and Martin Septim transforming into a dragon, the cheese, because Sheogorath watched his only friend sacrifice himself to save the world. If this is the hero of Kvatch, and all evidence suggests it is, it marks the only time two Elder Scrolls player characters meet. The character accumulates more canonical titles than any other protagonist: Savior of Bruma, Champion of Cyrodiil, Divine Crusader if you complete the Knights of the Nine DLC, and the best part is they earned every single one through effort, not birthright. Fan sentiment is overwhelmingly positive and trending upward. CBR wrote an article arguing the hero of Kvatch is arguably the most powerful protagonist in the series. An ESO forum user stated plainly, COC is the strongest one. He became a Daedric prince while Dragonborn was manipulated by Hermaeus Mora. The Oblivion meme ecosystem, the adoring fans screaming by Azura, by Azura, by Azura, and guard dialogue like, stop, you violated the law, creates an endearing cultural context around the game. The 2025 Oblivion remastered release reinvigorated this love. Fans call the hero underrated so frequently that the label became its own form of consensus. The community's beloved underdog who started with nothing, saved the world as someone else's sidekick, and ascended to literal godhood. But if you think becoming a Daedric prince is the peak, there's one protagonist the community loves even more, and their greatest accomplishment was walking away. The Nerevarine. The Nerevarine wins. Across Reddit polls, forum rankings, tier lists, and lore debates, Morrowind's protagonist consistently claims the top spot among the engaged Elder Scrolls community, and the reasons run deeper than nostalgia. The Nerevarine is the literal reincarnation of Indoril Nerevar, the ancient chimere Hortator who united the Dark Elf people 4,000 years ago and was betrayed by his closest allies. Vivek, Almalexia, and Sothasil, the Tribunal, used forbidden Dwemer tools on the heart of Lorkhan to transform themselves into living gods, possibly murdering Nerevar in the process. The Daedric Prince Azura cursed them for this betrayal, turning all Chimer into ashen-skinned Dunmer, and prophesied Nerevar's return. Over millennia, many tried to fulfill the prophecy and failed. Their ghosts reside in the cavern of the incarnate, encouraging the true incarnation. You are the Nerevarine. You are the chosen. You can't fail. What separates this from generic Chosen One narratives is ambiguity. The game never confirms whether you truly are Nerevar reborn or just someone who happens to fulfill the criteria. Bethesda committed to never resolving this, and the Nerevarine must earn every title through political maneuvering, convincing all three great houses, Redoran, Hlalu, and Telvanni, to name you Hortator, convincing all four Ashlander tribes, the Urshalaku, Ahemusa, Zainab, and Arabanimson, to proclaim you Nerevarine. This requires persuasion, bribery, completing faction questlines, and sometimes violence. The Corpus Disease sequence is the franchise's most brilliant narrative mechanical moment. Infected by Dagoth Gers, who delivers Dagoth Ur's hauntingly respectful offer of alliance, once we were friends and brothers, Lord Nerevar, the Nerevarine visits the 4,000-year-old Telvanni wizard Devaith Fear. You venture into the Corpusarium, a dungeon filled with Corpus victims who've become bloated monsters. You meet Yagrum Bagarn, the last living Dwemer, a massively obese elf who served under Kagranak and survived only because he was in an outer realm when his entire race vanished. Fear provides an experimental cure that removes the negative effects but leaves the disease itself, making the Nerevarine immune to all disease and aging, functionally immortal. The final battle with Dagoth Ur defies villain conventions. Dagoth Ur maintains honor, allows the first strike, and offers a genuine alliance to drive the Empire from Morrowind. His tragedy, a loyal friend corrupted by the heart of Lorkhan while his brothers became gods through betrayal, makes him one of gaming's most compelling antagonists. The Nerevarine strikes the heart of Lorkhan 5 times with the Dwemer tools Sundar and Keening, destroying it and scattering its power. Dagoth Ur becomes mortal and dies. The blight ends, and the Tribunal loses their divinity. The Tribunal expansion delivers the franchise's greatest villain monologue. Almalexia, maddened by her loss of godhood, murders Sothasil and lures the Nerevarine to the Clockwork City as a sacrifice. "You were to be my greatest martyr, the heroic Nerevarine, sacrificing all to protect Morrowind from the mad Sothosil. The Nerevarine kills a living goddess. In Blood Moon, they defeat an aspect of the Daedric prince Hircine in mortal combat on Solstheim. The body count of gods and godlike beings is unmatched. Michael Kirkbride shaped much of the Nerevarines' metaphysical depth. The concept represented a massive leap from Arena's generic fighter and Daggerfall's political agent to a prophecy-driven reincarnation embedded in an alien culture's religion, politics, and philosophy. Ken Rolston, as lead designer, wrote the outline of all quest lines himself. The result was the most narratively cohesive Elder Scrolls game ever made. After fulfilling their destiny, the Nerevarines sailed to Akavir, the mysterious eastern continent, and was never heard from again. That departure is the final masterstroke, where the Dragonborn may be trapped by Hermaeus Mora and the hero of Kvatch lost themselves in madness. The Nerevarines simply left on their own terms. GameRant's tier list placed them first. What sets the Nerevarine apart is that their fate is their own. One Reddit user captured it perfectly. So powerful he went off to Akavir out of boredom. The Nerevarine is the community's champion not because they're the strongest, but because their story trusts the player enough to leave the most important question unanswered and then lets them walk away into legend. Every Elder Scrolls protagonist disappears. The heroes who save Tamriel from gods, demons, and apocalyptic threats all share one disturbing pattern. The moment their quest ends, they vanish from history. Some fade into silence. One was erased by time itself. Another became a god. Here's what actually happened to all six, starting with the hero nobody remembers, the Eternal Champion. The first Elder Scrolls hero is the only one who was completely forgotten by the lore. The Eternal Champion spent a decade collecting the 8 pieces of the Staff of Chaos to defeat Jagar Tharn, freed Emperor Uriel Septim VII from a decade of imprisonment in Oblivion, and then just stopped existing in the story. No other game references them. Not Daggerfall, not Morrowind, not Oblivion, not Skyrim, not even ESO, which takes place thousands of years earlier and could have mentioned them as a future legend. Here's what makes this so strange. Early Arena materials actually named the protagonist. They called them Talon, born in 3E370. The Grateful Emperor promised they would rule by his side after saving the Empire, and then Bethesda simply never mentioned them again. The in-game books that discuss Jagar Tharn's coup and the decade he spent impersonating the Emperor never name who stopped him. The brief history of the Empire confirms the Imperial Simulacrum happened. The biography of Queen Baranzaya credits Baranzaya with secretly helping the champion, quote, through the spirit Rhea Silmane. But the champion's identity remained unknown to the public for years, reportedly at Uriel's own insistence. Even Alduin's Wall in Skyrim references the simulacrum in its prophecy, but never mentions the person who ended it. The community's best theory is that Okado of Firsthold, the High Chancellor you meet in Oblivion, might be the Eternal Champion. The evidence includes his extraordinary level of trust with Emperor Uriel, his position literally standing at the Emperor's right hand in the Daggerfall instruction manual, and a timeline that actually works. If the champion was born around 3E370, they would have been roughly 63 years old by the Oblivion Crisis. Old, but not impossibly old. But that assumes the champion was human. If they were an Altmer or Dunmer, they could have lived centuries. Without a confirmed race, we can't even narrow down their potential lifespan. The Eternal Champion could have died of old age before Morrowind. They could have still been alive during Skyrim. We have literally zero information. Here's the thing. Unlike every protagonist who came after them, the Eternal Champion was not a figure of prophecy. They were not chosen by the gods. They were just the last person left standing when Jagar Tharn's coup killed or imprisoned everyone else. They were a prisoner who happened to get a dream from a dead battle mage's ghost and decided to do something about it. Bethesda adopted a firm policy after Arena of never canonizing player character details like race, gender, or specific actions. The Eternal Champion's total absence from later lore is not a deliberate mystery. It's the first casualty of that design philosophy. They saved the entire Empire from a decade of tyranny under an imposter emperor, and history forgot them so thoroughly that we don't even know if they lived to see the next year. At least the later heroes got mentioned in books, or confirmed dead. The Eternal Champion got nothing. They are the most successful protagonist and the most thoroughly erased. The Agent of Daggerfall has the strangest confirmed fate of any Elder Scrolls Scrolls protagonists. They were not forgotten. They were not lost to history. They were consumed by a fracture in reality itself. The agent arrived in the Iliac Bay in 3E405 as a Blades operative on what seemed like a routine assignment. Investigate King Lysandas's ghost, recover a sensitive letter for the Emperor. Simple espionage work. But the mission spiraled into something far bigger when the agent discovered that every major power in the region was hunting for the same artifact, the Totem of Tiber Septim, which could control the Numidium, a reality-warping brass god left dormant since the Second Era. Daggerfall gave players 6 different endings. Give the totem to the Empire, give it to one of 3 kings, give it to the necromancer Mannimarco, or give it to the Underking, who wanted to reclaim his stolen soul and finally die. There was even a cut 7th ending where the agent activated the Numidium themselves and got killed by it. Bethesda had to pick one for canon. They picked all of them. On the 9th through 11th of Frostfall, 3E417, the activation of the Numidium triggered a dragon break. This is not a metaphor. The timeline fractured. Akatosh, the dragon god of time, was disrupted. Mutually exclusive events happened simultaneously. The 44 petty kingdoms of the Iliac Bay collapsed into 4 major powers. Mannimarco ascended to godhood and became a constellation. The Underking got his soul back and died. And somehow, impossibly, every version of the totem's fate occurred at once. The in-game book, The Warp in the West, written by Ulvius Tarot and found in both Morrowind and Oblivion, contains the critical line. The Blades filed an official report on the event, and it reads, "We unfortunately lost contact with that agent immediately after the event. His report might have gone some way to resolving the contradictory and paradoxical accounts of the event. The agent stood at the exact center of a temporal paradox where they simultaneously gave the totem to everyone and no one, and they never filed a report. The Blades never heard from them again." Lead designer Ted Peterson confirmed in a 2021 interview that dragon breaks were invented specifically to resolve Daggerfall's multiple endings. He called it a little bit of a betrayal of player choice, but acknowledged the narrative necessity. In a 2025 podcast, he admitted dragon breaks are really silly, but said he still liked the concept. But here's what matters. That cut ending where the agent activates the Numidium and dies? It became canon alongside everything else. The community overwhelmingly believes the agent is dead. Some theories go darker. The book Where Were You When the Dragon Broke describes the aftermath in apocalyptic terms. Whole armies teleported hundreds of miles. Mass disappearances, firestorms, tsunamis. Witnesses whose eyes were burned out by light nobody could explain. One person standing at the center of all that contradiction may not have simply died. They may have been shattered across the fractured timelines, unable to reconverge when Akatosh repaired himself, erased from existence entirely. The agent is the only Elder Scrolls protagonist with strong canonical evidence of death. The Blades report confirms they vanished the moment the dragon break happened. Their report was never delivered, and nobody in the Empire ever saw them again. At least the other heroes got to walk away. The Nerevarine. The Nerevarine has the most poetically tragic fate of any Elder Scrolls hero. They saved Morrowind from a mad god, fulfilled every prophecy, gained literal immortality, and then sailed away and never came back, not even when their people needed them most. The Nerevarine arrived in Morrowind as a prisoner in 3E427. Whether they were actually Nerevar reborn or just someone who happened to fit the prophecy is deliberately left unclear. But they destroyed Dagoth-Ur, killed 2 members of the Tribunal, left Vivek's fate undetermined, and ended the blight threatening all of Vardenfell. The Pocket Guide to the Empire 3rd edition, published 5 years later, states it plainly. The Nerevarine likewise has vanished. 1 year after that, during Oblivion, NPCs across Cyrodiil share a specific rumor. Altmer, Bosmer, and Dunmer all say the same thing. I've heard that the Nerevarine has left on an expedition to Akavir and hasn't been heard from since. This is the only canonical explanation for where they went. 200 years later, in Skyrim's Dragonborn DLC, the Telvanni wizard Neloth casually mentions them while standing on Solstheim. You are too young to remember the Nerevarine. He defeated Dagoth-Ur and saved us all from the Blight. Here's where it gets dark. The Nerevarine is almost certainly still alive. During Morrowind's main quest, you contract Corpus disease. Devaithfire's experimental cure removes the negative effects, the madness, the deformity, but retains the positive ones. Complete immunity to all disease, and immunity to aging itself. The Nerevarine prophecy explicitly states, neither blight nor age can harm him. The last living Dwemer, Yagrum Bagarn, survived thousands of years with Corpus. The Nerevarine carries those same benefits. By the time of Skyrim, the Nerevarine would would be over 200 years old, but biologically, still whatever age they were when fire cured them, probably late 20s, early 30s, functionally ageless, functionally immortal, and completely absent when Morrowind collapsed. In 4E5, Red Mountain erupted in the Red Year. Vardenfell was devastated. Vivec City was destroyed. The Dunmer people were scattered. The prophesied savior of Morrowind, immune to death, immune to disease, immune to time itself, was already gone. In the unofficial but widely referenced text, The Fall of Aldarune, the armies of Oblivion destroy the Redoran capital, and the survivors pray for help. The text reads, "Prayers to Vivec and the Nerevarine go unanswered. The hero who saved the Dunmer simply was not there when their entire world burned." Community theories overwhelmingly hold that the Nerevarine is still alive somewhere on Akavir. They were inducted into the Blades by Caius Cosades during the main quest, so it's possible they went as an intelligence operative. A minority theory suggests that Corpus was tied to Dagoth Ur's power through the heart of Lorkhan, and destroying both might have gradually eroded the disease's benefits. Maybe the Nerevarine is mortal again. Maybe they died centuries ago, but nothing in the lore confirms that. The dramatic irony cuts deep. Nerevar was betrayed and murdered by the people he trusted most, the Tribunal. His reincarnation fulfilled every prophecy, saved everyone, and then vanished. History repeated itself in a new key. The Nerevarine walked away, and an entire culture paid the price for their absence. But at least they chose to leave. The hero of Kvatch did not get that luxury. The hero of Kvatch. The hero of Kvatch has the most definitively resolved fate of any Elder Scrolls protagonist, and it is deeply unsettling. After closing every Oblivion Gate, recovering the Amulet of Kings, and watching Martin Septim sacrifice himself to become the avatar of Akatosh, the hero entered the Shivering Isles, the realm of Sheogorath, Daedric Prince of Madness, and they never left as the person they were. The Shivering Isles. DLC revolves around the Grey March, an eternal curse. Every era, at the end of every era, Sheogorath reverts to his original form, Jiggalag, Daedric Prince of Order. Jiggalag then destroys his own realm and every soul in it before the other Daedric princes curse him back into madness. The cycle repeats forever. Sheogorath cannot break it, because he becomes the thing that perpetuates it. The hero of Kvatch broke the cycle by defeating Jiggalag in single combat, and Jiggalag, finally free after millennia, delivered the speech that ends the DLC. "You now hold the mantle of madness, and Jiggalag is free to roam the voids of Oblivion once more. I will take my leave, and you will remain here, mortal." Mortal? King? God? It seems uncertain. Fare thee well, Sheogorath, Prince of Madness. The hero of Kvatch became Sheogorath, not symbolically, not temporarily. They assumed the divine mantle of a Daedric prince, and Skyrim confirms it 200 years later. In Skyrim's quest, The Mind of Madness, the Dragonborn encounters Sheogorath vacationing inside the mind of the long-dead Emperor Pelagius III, and his dialogue is loaded with first-person references to Oblivion's events. He says, "I was there for that whole sordid affair. Marvelous time. Butterflies, blood, a fox, a severed head. Oh, and the cheese." The fox, capitalized, is the Grey Fox from Oblivion's Thieves Guild. The severed head references the Dark Brotherhood questline. The butterflies are from the Shivering Isles entrance sequence. But here's the line that confirms everything. Sheogorath says of Martin Septim, he turned into a dragon god, and that's hardly sporting. The original Sheogorath was transforming into Jiggalag during the Oblivion Crisis. He was not present at the Temple of the One when Martin shattered the Amulet of Kings and became Akatosh's avatar. Only the hero of Kvatch was there. Only the hero saw Martin transform. Dervanin, the NPC who gives you the quest in Skyrim, previously appeared as a priest of Mania in the Shivering Isles DLC. He is still serving the same master. The continuity is deliberate. Bethesda designed this reveal carefully. The philosophical question left open is whether the hero of Kvatch still exists inside Sheogorath. The Elder Scrolls concept of mantling, walking like a god until reality cannot distinguish the mortal from the deity, suggests a merger rather than replacement. Evidence for survival includes Sheogorath's personal memories of Oblivion and a subtle personality shift. Skyrim's Sheogorath is more whimsical than cruel. His quest involves curing madness, not causing it. Fans note this feels different from Oblivion's Sheogorath, who was vicious and calculating. Evidence for consumption. After 200 years, no trace of the original mortal personality emerges beyond fragmentary memories. Sheogorath refers to his mantle as passed down from me to myself, and he casually recounts events from eras before the hero hero of Kvatch was born, as if he experienced them personally. The mortal may have been devoured entirely by the role they assumed. Bethesda never directly confirmed Sheogorath in Skyrim is the hero of Kvatch to maintain their policy of ambiguity, but the in-game evidence is overwhelming and clearly intentional. The mortal became a god. Whether they survived that transformation or were consumed by it is the only mystery left. At least the hero of Kvatch's fate is known. The last Dragonborn's fate remains completely unresolved. The last Dragonborn. The last Dragonborn's fate is the great unresolved question hanging over Elder Scrolls lore, and TES 6 will almost certainly answer it. After defeating Alduin and Sovngarde, and notably Alduin's soul was never absorbed, meaning the World Eater may return at the true end of time, the Dragonborn traveled to Solstheim and killed Miraak, the first Dragonborn who had been trapped in Hermaeus Mora's realm of Apocrypha for 4,500 years. The Dragonborn DLC's ending is where everything turns ominous. As Miraak dies, Hermaeus Mora declares, "I have found a new Dragonborn to serve me." Later, when the Dragonborn returns to Apocrypha, Mora warns, "The lure of Apocrypha will call you back. It is your fate." Miraak's final words carry a bitter edge. "May he be rewarded for his service as I am." Parallel is unmistakable. Miraak spent millennia as Mora's prisoner, and Mora just claimed a replacement. The community's most widely accepted theory is that Hermaeus Mora will eventually trap the Dragonborn exactly as he trapped Miraak. The Dragonborn DLC becomes the character's last canonical act before being pulled into Apocrypha permanently. The parallel to the hero of Kvatch becoming Sheogorath after the Shivering Isles. DLC reinforces this reading. Final DLC equals final transformation. Pattern established. But the counter-arguments are substantial. The Dragonborn possesses a dragon soul, not a mortal soul that can be bargained away to Daedric princes, a shard of Akatosh himself. Hermaeus Mora never actually possessed Miraak's dragon soul. He trapped Miraak's body in Apocrypha and used his knowledge, but the dragon soul remained beyond his reach. When the last Dragonborn kills Miraak, they absorb his soul. Mora does not. That matters. And the Greybeards bestowed a title on the Dragonborn that carries immense weight, Ysmir, Dragon of the North. That is the exact same title held by Tiber Septim before he ascended to godhood and became Talos. The ghost of old Hroldan in Skyrim mistakes the Dragonborn for Hjalti, Tiber Septim's birth name. The game is drawing deliberate parallels between the last Dragonborn and the mortal who became a god. This fuels the second major theory, apotheosis. The Dragonborn absorbs dragon souls throughout the entire game. Each one is a fragment of Akka, the oversoul of the time dragon. By the end of the main quest, the Dragonborn has consumed dozens of these divine fragments. Then they kill Miraak and absorb his soul, which itself contains thousands of years of accumulated dragon souls from his time in Apocrypha. That is an unprecedented level of divine power stacking inside one mortal body. Community lore scholars on r/Tesslore call this the third walking way to godhood, soul stack, combined with the Ysmir title, the Talos parallels, and the Shezarene theory that Elder Scrolls protagonists are avatars of Lorkhan, the missing god. Some believe the Dragonborn will mantle Talos, or merge with the Talos oversoul entirely, becoming a god not through Daedric transformation like the hero of Kvatch, but through Aedric ascension like Tiber Septim. Todd Howard has shared exactly zero details about the Dragonborn's fate or TES 6's plot. He confirmed in 2025 that the game is progressing very well, but offered nothing else. Bethesda's established pattern makes one thing certain: TES 6 will reference the last Dragonborn. Every game mentions the previous protagonist through books, rumors, or NPC dialogue. The most likely outcome, following precedent, is that the Dragonborn disappeared into Apocrypha, into divinity, into legend, but the game will tell us which. The Dragonborn stands at a crossroads between damnation and godhood, claimed by a Daedric prince, empowered by an Aedric gift, the only protagonist whose fate is genuinely open and awaiting resolution in the next game. But if you think the last Dragonborn story is complicated, wait until you hear about the hero who saved the world 6 times and was forgotten by history entirely. The Vestige. The Vestige occupies the strangest position of any Elder Scrolls protagonist. They are almost certainly the most powerful hero in the entire series. They have the longest list of accomplishments. They are functionally immortal, and they were completely erased from history. In 2E582, a mortal was sacrificed to Molag Bal by the Worm Cult. Their soul was ripped out, their body was killed, but their soul reformed in Cold Harbor using Azure Plasm, the Daedric material native to Molag Bal's realm, creating a perfect, indestructible new body. The in-game book Chaotic Creatia, the Azure Plasm explains explains the mechanism. When Mundus faces existential threat, the heart of Nirn spontaneously generates Paragon's soul Shriven to defend itself, in a manner analogous to the way the mortal body fights off infection. The vestige is Nirn's immune response made flesh. This grants the vestige functional immortality. When killed, their azure plasm body reforms at Wayshrines, reattuned to Nirn through sky shards, which are fragments of Aetherius. Even after recovering their soul from Molag Bal during the main quest's climax, the vestige's original mortal body is long dead. They persist as a mortal soul inside an imperishable body made of Daedric material, a unique ontological status, neither fully mortal nor fully Daedric. The vestige's accomplishments are staggering and still growing. They have personally defeated or thwarted Molag Bal, Clavicus Vile, Mephala, Nocturnal, and Mehrunes Dagon. In the 2024 Gold Road expansion, they help exile Athelia, a forgotten Daedric prince of paths, to a reality without magic. And when Hermaeus Mora erased all memory of Athelia from existence itself, he exempted exactly two beings, himself and the vestige. The vestige now carries knowledge that no other creature in all of Mundus or Oblivion possesses. Mora designated them Fate's proxy and acknowledged their unique mortal ability to reach outcomes that would otherwise be impossible, a quality not possessed by immortal beings. The vestige has saved Tamriel at least 6 times across ESO's main quest and chapter storylines. They stopped the plane melt. They defeated the Daedric Triad. They ended the machinations of multiple Daedric princes. They are the single most accomplished hero in Elder Scrolls history by sheer volume of world-ending threats prevented. Yet no single-player Elder Scrolls game ever mentions them. Not Arena, not Daggerfall, not Morrowind, not Oblivion, not Skyrim. The vestige does not appear in any book, any dialogue, any rumor, or any prophecy in any mainline game. They are completely absent from the historical record. ESO creative director Rich Lambert explained the deliberate design logic behind this. Todd Howard and Matt Firor specifically chose the Second Era's Interregnum, a 400-year period of chaos where practically no records survived, so the MMO could exist without contradicting established lore. 1,000 years separate the Vestige's era from Arena's events. That is enough time for even the greatest deeds to be forgotten. Only immortal beings like Daedric princes would remember, and they are not writing history books for mortals. There is one curious footnote. In Arena and Daggerfall, Dunmer NPCs sometimes exclaimed by the Soulless One. This dialogue predates ESO by 2 decades, and is almost certainly coincidental. But the UESP notes dryly, this may be coincidence. Since ESO continues receiving new content, the Seasons of the Wormcult arc launched in 2025, the Vestige's story has no definitive ending. Their fate remains perpetually unresolved. An immortal hero with an indestructible body, accumulating world-saving accomplishments endlessly in an era the future will never remember. The most powerful protagonist in Elder Scrolls history, condemned to be the most thorough footnote. The pattern across all 6 heroes is unmistakable. Saving Tamriel is not a career, it is a transformation. The Eternal Champion was forgotten. The Agent was erased by time. The Nerevarine chose exile and immortality. The hero of Kvatch became a mad god. The last Dragonborn stands claimed by forces beyond mortality, and the vestige persists forever in an era history will not record. None of them retire. They transcend, they vanish, or they become something else entirely, and the world moves on without them. Skyrim has nearly 100 recruitable followers, and most of them are completely forgettable, but a handful are so powerful, so broken, or so beloved that they've defined how people play the game for over a decade. Today I'm ranking and explaining every follower that actually matters, starting with the one you already know, Lydia. Let's be honest, your first Skyrim playthrough started with Lydia. You cleared Bleak Falls Barrow, became Thane of Whiterun, and suddenly this woman was standing in your house telling you she's sworn to carry your burdens. You didn't ask for her, you didn't even know what a follower was yet, but there she was. And here's the thing about Lydia. She's not good. She's the tutorial follower, the game's way of showing you that companions exist before you discover ones that are actually worth bringing along. She has no unique perks, no spellcasting, no special abilities of any kind. She swings a one-handed weapon, wears steel plate armor, and that's it. That's the whole package. Her level cap of 50 means she stops scaling before you hit the real endgame content. By the time you're fighting Draugr Deathlords and Elder Dragons, Lydia is functionally a meat shield with an expiration date. And unlike DLC followers who are flagged as essential, Lydia can die permanently. One careless fireball, one badly aimed Fusro Da off a cliff, and she's gone forever. Countless playthroughs have ended with players staring at her corpse wondering what just happened. Then there's the pathfinding. The Lydia stuck on rocks meme exists because it's painfully real. She blocks doorways. She sprints directly into trap triggers. She falls off mountains. She walks face first into your AoE damage mage like it's her job, but she's iconic. She's the baseline, the follower every other companion on this list gets measured against, and almost every single one of them beats her. Speaking of which, let's talk about a follower who costs actual gold and still manages to disappoint. Mercurio. Mercurio costs 500 gold to hire. That's the first red flag, and somehow it's not even the biggest one. You find him sitting in the Bee and Barb Tavern in Riften, offering his services as a combat mage for what amounts to a small fortune in the early game. 500 gold. For context, that's a significant chunk of a house down payment. And what do you get for that investment? A destruction mage with a level cap of 40. Meanwhile, Lydia, the follower most famous for getting stuck on rocks and carrying your burdens, caps out at 50. She literally outscales the guy you paid for. Now, to be fair, Mercurio isn't useless. His destruction skill sits above 70, and his shock spells, including Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning, give him genuine punch in the early hours of the game. When everything works, he can melt through enemies faster than most melee followers can close the distance. But here's the thing, everything rarely works. Mercurio has one of the most frustrating combat AI behaviors in the entire game. The moment a melee enemy gets close to him, he panics. He turns around and runs. And while he's busy retreating, he stops casting entirely. Your 500 gold mage becomes an expensive spectator jogging backward through a dungeon while you fight for your life. You paid real gold for a follower who literally runs away from fights. Let that sink in. And the worst part? Later in the game, you can recruit mages who are objectively better in every measurable way for free, 0 gold. We'll get to one of them soon, and the comparison is honestly embarrassing for Mercurio. He's the follower that teaches new players a hard economic lesson about Skyrim. The game will happily take your money and give you something worse than what you could have gotten for nothing, but at least Mercurio only costs gold. The next follower on this list costs something far more valuable, your patience. Mjol the Lioness. Mjol is one of the most likable followers in the entire game. Genuinely principled, well-written, and positioned in Riften as this lone moral compass, surrounded by thieves' guild corruption on every side. She's the kind of character you want to root for. But here's the problem. Actually recruiting her requires you to dive into a full Dwemer ruin to recover her lost sword, Grimsever. That's not a quick errand. That's a legitimate dungeon crawl with Falmer, traps, and everything else Dwemer ruins love to throw at you. And by the time you've fought through all of that just to unlock her as a follower, you've probably already picked up 2 or 3 companions who do her job just as well. Because mechanically, Mjol is painfully average. She caps at level 40, which is decent. Heavy armor and 2-handed specialization give her a solid warrior foundation. But that's it. No unique perks, no spells, no special abilities. 0 tricks up her sleeve. Every single thing she does in combat, other followers do at the same level or better, and most of them don't require a full quest line to recruit. She is a marriage candidate after you complete her quest, which adds roleplay value if you're into that. But from a pure utility standpoint, marrying a follower changes absolutely nothing about their combat performance. It's cosmetic. You get a home-cooked meal and a shop discount. Your sword-swinging companion doesn't suddenly hit harder because you exchanged vows. And that's the real tension with Mjol. Her character writing is genuinely excellent. The honor-bound warrior living in a city built on crime is a fantastic narrative setup, and her dialogue reflects that. She feels like she belongs in a better questline. But if you're building for combat efficiency, the investment to recruit her simply doesn't match the return. Speaking of followers who demand your attention before proving they deserve it, let's talk about someone the game practically throws at you. Aranea Einith. Most players will never meet this woman, and that's a tragedy, because she solves a problem nobody else in the game can. Aranea Einith is the priestess of Azura, and she's only available after you complete the quest at Azura's shrine and return the star to her. That last part is critical. If you side with Nelicar and grab the Black Star instead, she turns hostile and you lose her forever. And if you've played Skyrim and have 0 idea what I'm talking about, you're not alone. That quest is tucked away at a remote Daedric shrine that most players walk past without a second glance. There's no quest marker pointing you there, no NPC shoving you in that direction. You either stumble onto it or you don't. Here's why that matters. Aranea is a full offensive mage. She throws lightning bolts, ice spikes, and ice storms at anything that moves. But her real trick is something almost nobody talks about. She summons Atranax in combat. No commands, no setup, no waiting. The second a fight breaks out, she's conjuring flame or frost Atranax to back you up. That means in any engagement, you're not fighting with one companion. You're fighting with 2. And if you've played the Dawnguard DLC, you already know why that's insane. Vampire encounters in that content are constant. They ambush you in cities, they swarm you in caves, they show up at the worst possible moments. Aranea doesn't just fight them, she overwhelms them. Between her destruction spells and a summoned Atranax drawing aggro, she gives you breathing room that no other follower provides passively. Nobody else does this. Not Lydia, not J'zargo, nobody. But here's the catch. She's fragile. Level cap of 50 is solid, but she's wearing ceremonial robes instead of heavy armor. One power attack from a Draugr Deathlord and she's on the ground. You have to play around her, keep her at range, treat her like the backline caster she is. The real problem isn't her durability, though. It's that the players who would benefit most from her offensive magic and summoned backup, the ones struggling through Dawnguard vampire ambushes, are exactly the players who never find her. She's a hidden gem locked behind a quest most people skip, requiring a specific choice most people don't make, and the ones who do find her often grab a flashier option instead. Their loss. But speaking of followers people overlook, the next one on this list has an even bigger gap between reputation and actual combat performance. J'zargo. Remember that 500 gold you spent on Marcurio? This is where you learn that lesson the hard way. J'zargo is a Khajiit mage studying at the College of Winterhold. He costs exactly 0 gold to recruit, and he has no level cap. None. He scales with you indefinitely. Marcurio caps out at 40 and stops growing. J'zargo never stops. Already the math is embarrassing for anyone who hired the guy in Riften, but the unlimited scaling isn't even the real story here. J'zargo's primary combat school is Destruction, and he dual casts it with 0 hesitation. His Destruction skill sits at 100, meaning he's throwing fully powered shock spells from the moment you recruit him, and only gets more dangerous as he levels. That means J'zargo doesn't just add damage. He adds relentless, consistent damage output that scales into the late game when most followers have already hit their ceiling and started feeling useless. No other mage follower in the base game replicates this. You're essentially getting an endlessly scaling artillery platform walking behind you for free. And here's a detail most people overlook. As a Khajiit, J'zargo has a racial bonus of plus 15 unarmed damage. That sounds like a meme stat until you watch him actually use it. When enemies close the distance before he can get a spell off, he doesn't just stand there looking confused. He starts clawing faces. It's not his best mode, but it's a legitimate fallback that keeps him useful in close quarters. Now, let's be honest. J'zargo isn't perfect. His AI has the same casting delay problems that plague every mage follower in Skyrim. Sometimes enemies reach him before he finishes winding up a spell, and he defaults to melee combat where he's clearly outclassed by dedicated warriors. This is a real and documented frustration. His utility is genuine, but it's not unconditional. Here's the thing though. Compare him directly to Marcurio. Same magical archetype, radically different long-term value. Where Marcurio hits a wall at level 40, J'zargo keeps climbing forever. Where Marcurio costs gold, J'zargo costs nothing. For players who want magical support that never becomes obsolete, J'zargo is the most practical mage available in the base game. Full stop, but a good mage isn't the only thing hiding behind a quest line. Some of Skyrim's best followers require you to earn their loyalty first, and the next one demands exactly that. Ayla, the Huntress. You're mid-dungeon, fighting through a pack of Draugr, and suddenly the woman next to you drops to all fours. Her body twists, bones crack, and she erupts into a full-blown werewolf. Fur, claws, teeth, the whole thing. Your companion just turned into a 7-foot beast, and is now ragdolling undead across the room like they're made of paper. That's Ayla the Huntress, and that moment alone is why people remember her. But let's talk about what she actually brings to the table beyond the spectacle. Ayla caps at level 50 with a primary specialization in archery, where her skill reaches 100, backed by solid one-handed combat at 75. She's classified as a thief archer build, which means her real strength is hanging back and peppering enemies with arrows, while switching to melee only when things get close. That flexibility matters more than people think, because follower AI in Skyrim is notoriously bad at committing to one strategy. Ayla's skill set means she's at least competent no matter what the AI decides to do, but she's at her deadliest with a bow in her hands. Now, the werewolf transformation. Here's where honesty matters. On higher difficulties like expert or legendary, that beast form is a genuine combat asset. Disease immunity, massively boosted physical damage, and the ability to tear through groups of enemies that would otherwise stagger lock a normal follower. It's not just cool to watch, it saves runs. But on lower difficulties, it's a light show. Everything already dies fast enough that the transformation is more spectacle than strategy. If you're playing on Adept or below, Ayla's werewolf form is impressive, but unnecessary. Here's a detail most players completely miss. Ayla doubles as an archery trainer, offering up to 5 paid training sessions per player level. That means every time you level up, your follower slot is also functioning as a skill coaching service. You're literally getting combat education between dungeon clears, and since she's your follower, you can trade with her right after paying for training and take your gold back. It's one of the oldest tricks in the game, and it turns Ayla into a free archery leveling machine. She's also one of a limited pool of marriageable followers, which adds a layer of roleplay depth that her fellow companions simply don't offer. But Ayla's about to look modest compared to what's coming next, because the follower ranked above her doesn't just transform, she rewrites the rules of combat entirely. Cicero. Nobody in Skyrim sounds like Cicero. Nobody acts like Cicero. Nobody makes you question your own sanity for enjoying their company quite like Cicero. He's the Dark Brotherhood's self-appointed keeper of the Night Mother, a jester who speaks to a corpse in a coffin and genuinely believes she talks back. His voice lines are theatrical, unhinged, and so character-specific that you could identify him from a single sentence with your eyes closed. The developers gave him more unique dialogue than followers with twice his narrative importance, and every single line drips with this manic devotion that sits somewhere between endearing and deeply unsettling. Here's the thing about Cicero. The Skyrim community cannot agree on him, and they never will. Players who love him become genuinely attached to his particular brand of chaos. They'll tell you he's the most entertaining companion in the entire game, that his constant singing and rambling transforms boring dungeon crawls into something memorable. Players who hate him will dismiss him within an hour and never look back. His commentary is relentless. There is no volume knob. You either find that charming or you find it unbearable, and both reactions are completely valid. But let me tell you what tips the scale. Cicero becomes recruitable if you spare him during the Cure for Madness in the Dark Brotherhood questline, and the moment he joins you, he gains essential NPC status. That means he literally cannot die, ever. No matter what hits him, no matter what difficulty you're playing on, no matter how catastrophically wrong a fight goes, Cicero drops to one knee, recovers, and gets back up. You cannot lose him. Not to a dragon, not to a dwarven centurion, not to your own poorly aimed fireball. His combat build leans heavily into sneak and one-handed daggers, with some archery mixed in, making him a surprisingly effective stealth killer. But his immortality is the actual selling point. He is the consequence-free follower for legendary difficulty runs, for experimental playthroughs, where you're testing broken builds, for any situation where losing a companion would cost you hours of progress. Every other follower below this point on the list can die on you. Cicero can't, and visually, he's unmistakable. That jester outfit makes him look like nothing else in the game. For players who screenshot or stream their playthroughs, Cicero is instant visual identity. The modding community agrees. Marriage mods for Cicero are among the most downloaded companion mods in Skyrim's history, which tells you everything about how much emotional investment players have in this character beyond raw combat numbers. He's polarizing, he's immortal, he's impossible to ignore, and he's still not the strongest follower in the game because the next one has a level cap that makes everybody else look like a liability. Teldrin Cero. Most followers we've talked about so far hit a level cap eventually. Ayla stops at 50, Cicero stops at 50. But here's where it gets interesting, because Teldrin Cero, a mercenary sitting in a corner of Raven Rock, also caps at 60. 10 levels higher than most capped followers on this list. And that gap matters more than you think. Teldrin Cero is a Dragonborn DLC hire, 500 gold, same price as Mercurio. But unlike Mercurio, this 500 gold actually buys you something worth keeping. That 10 level advantage over most other capped followers is not cosmetic. On legendary difficulty, follower level directly determines how fast they go down. Every point of health, every point of damage resistance, every fraction of DPS scales with level. At 60, Teldrin is still growing while companions like Ayla and Cicero plateaued 10 levels ago. In endgame encounters where other followers are getting dropped in 2 hits, Teldrin is still standing, still swinging, still useful. And speaking of swinging, his combat specialization is Spell Sword. He's the only follower in the game with the Armsman perk, boosting his one-handed damage output. He fights with an elven sword in one hand and destruction magic in the other, meaning he's dealing physical and elemental damage simultaneously. Community damage testing confirms his DPS output exceeds most companions at equivalent difficulty settings because he's stacking 2 damage types while someone like Mjol is relying on one. He fights like someone who has been doing this professionally for decades, and mechanically, the numbers back that up. His personality matches. Dry, professional, occasionally sardonic. He doesn't scream at you like Cicero. He doesn't brood like Serana. He sounds like a guy who kills things for money and has zero illusions about what that means. It's refreshing. He talks like a coworker, not a character. Visually, he's got a distinct look. That chitin armor paired with his signature face wrappings gives gives him an identity that most followers simply don't have. You see him, and you know exactly who he is. He looks like a Dunmer mercenary who's been surviving Solstheim long before you showed up. Here's the thing nobody talks about. The gap between Teldrin's community recognition and his actual utility is enormous. Casual players almost never bring him up because the Serana conversation dominates everything. But speedrunners and challenge run communities, they consistently rate him as the superior combat follower for pure efficiency. He's the open secret of the optimization crowd. Now, let me be clear about what he isn't. He has no deep narrative arc, no unique quest line, no DLC storyline built around him. His rank here is entirely mechanical. He is the best tool in the box, if the tool is all you need. But the next follower on this list, she's not just a tool. She's the reason Bethesda proved they could write a companion people genuinely care about, and she changed what players expected from followers forever. Fair EA, you've probably spent hundreds of hours in Skyrim, maybe thousands. And there's a follower in this game who can do something that you almost certainly don't know about, because she's buried in a DLC that most players rush through to get back to the main map. Freya is a Dragonborn DLC exclusive, recruited after completing the Skull Village questline on Solstheim. On paper, she looks straightforward. One-handed weapons, restoration magic, light armor, and no level cap. That means she scales with you indefinitely, getting stronger the longer you keep her around. Her light armor setup means she's faster and more aggressive than your typical tank follower, mirroring the Dragonborn's own combat stance in a way that feels genuinely appropriate for Solstheim's harsh, wind-blasted landscape. She was designed for this world, and it shows. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Freya can heal herself mid-combat with restoration magic, while simultaneously pressuring enemies with one-handed strikes. That dual threat capability is rare in the follower roster. Most companions either deal damage or survive. Freya does both. She keeps herself alive through sustained fights that would drop other followers, and she does it without you babysitting her health bar or burning through healing potions on her behalf. Now think about what that means mechanically. Freya stays in the fight longer than almost anyone else. No level cap means she never falls off in scaling. Self-healing means she doesn't fold during extended dungeon crawls. You're not reviving her every 30 seconds like half the followers in this game. She just keeps swinging and keeps standing. Certain encounters turn into wars of attrition that she wins purely through outlasting everything in the room. Her dialogue carries real weight too. Freya's story is deeply embedded in the Hermaeus Mora and Black Book questlines, giving her meaningful narrative presence within the Dragonborn DLC. She doesn't have Serana's sprawling personal saga, but she doesn't need one. Her connection to the Skull, her resistance to Mirak's influence, her spiritual grounding against Daedric corruption, all of it makes her feel like a character who belongs exactly where she is. So why does nobody use her? Context. Dragonborn DLC players encounter Freya at roughly the same time they're discovering Serana through Dawnguard, and Serana's visual design, vampire powers, and massive personal questline dominate every conversation. Freya gets buried, not because she's weak, but because she's standing next to the most popular follower in the game. She earns her spot this high specifically because that infinite scaling and self-sustaining combat style are mechanically unique and deeply underexplored. Freya rewards the players who actually experiment with follower abilities, instead of defaulting to whoever looks strongest on a wiki page. But there's one follower who takes that philosophy even further, combining raw combat dominance with something Freya can't match: Serana. Let's talk about the follower who actually earned the #1 spot, not through nostalgia, not through memes, but by being the only companion in Skyrim who delivers on every single front simultaneously. Start with the combat, because that's where most followers live or die. Serana is a vampire lord with a toolkit that borders on unfair. She casts Drain Life to siphon health directly from enemies while sustaining herself. She throws Ice Spike and Ice Storm at range for solid destruction damage. She hits groups with Chain Lightning that arcs between targets. But here's the thing that separates her from every other follower on this list: battlefield recycling. Serana raises dead enemies to fight for your side mid-combat, turning every kill into a new ally. That's not a minor convenience. That's a force multiplication tool that zero other followers can replicate at her level. Not Teldrin, not J'zargo, nobody. Her level cap of 50 with full player scaling through that entire range means she stays powerful through a standard playthrough. She doesn't abandon you at level 20 like half the followers we've already covered. Now, let's be honest about the Teldrin debate, because ignoring it would be dishonest. Teldrin has a higher level cap, 60 versus 50. His raw DPS on legendary difficulty is superior. If pure combat efficiency is your only metric, Teldrin is the better tool, period. But most players don't play Skyrim like a spreadsheet, and that's where Serana buries everyone else. Her narrative depth is unmatched in the entire follower roster. Family trauma tied to a Daedric prophecy, a personal quest line about curing her vampirism, dialogue that actually evolves based on your choices. Bethesda wrote her as a full supporting character, not a combat utility with a name attached. She's the only follower in the vanilla game who feels like she exists, whether whether you're watching or not, and the community proves it. Over 10,000 dedicated mods on modding platforms. The top romance and overhaul variants have crossed 100,000 downloads each. No other vanilla follower comes remotely close to that level of investment. Players don't just use Serana. They care about her. That's the answer to the question this entire video has been building toward. What does a perfect Skyrim follower look like? It looks like someone who fights well, talks to you like a person, and makes you genuinely care what happens to them. Serana is that follower, and it's not even close. Skyrim has over 60 marriage candidates, but the husbands? Nobody ranks them. Nobody talks about which ones are actually worth marrying, and which ones are a complete waste of an amulet of Mara. So today, I'm breaking down and ranking every single husband in Skyrim, from the absolute worst to the best of the best, starting with a man who has literally nothing to offer. And I mean nothing. Angranor Once Honored. We're kicking off this tier list in D tier, and we're starting with a literal beggar. Angranor Once Honored is a Nord living on the frozen streets of Windhelm with 0 gold, 0 home, and 0 prospects. He's a former Stormcloak soldier who fought in the Civil War, got chewed up by it, and ended up sleeping on the pavement. And you can marry this man. Here's the thing, there is 0 barrier to entry. No quest, no task, no reputation check. You just walk up to him wearing the Amulet of Mara and propose. That's it. He says yes immediately, because of course he does. Mechanically, Angranor is the weakest husband in the entire game. No trainer skills, no notable combat stats, no unique abilities whatsoever. He brings absolutely nothing to the table except gratitude and a sad backstory. But here's where it gets interesting. Players who marry Angranor aren't doing it for the stats. They're doing it because it feels like the right thing to do. In a game full of transactional relationships where you marry someone because they can train you in heavy armor or sell you discount potions, marrying Angranor feels like an actual act of kindness. You're giving a forgotten war veteran a second chance at life. It's sweet, it's genuinely emotional, and statistically, it's a complete disaster. That's D tier in a nutshell. But if you think starting with a beggar is rough, wait until you meet the town drunk, Kosnak. Most guys ask you out for coffee. Maybe dinner if they're feeling bold. Kosnak requires you to punch him in the face first, and honestly, that should tell you everything you need to know about this relationship. Kosnak is a Breton who spends most of his time drinking at the Silver Blood Inn in Markarth, but he actually lives in the Warrens. Yeah, the poorest, most depressing housing in the entire city. This man's entire existence revolves around being hammered in a tavern he can't even afford to stay at. And Bethesda thought, yeah, that's husband material. Here's the thing, to even unlock the option of marrying this guy, you have to beat him in a brawl. No fetch quests, no heartfelt conversations, no proving yourself through heroic deeds. You walk up, throw fists, win, and suddenly he's interested. It's the most unhinged courtship mechanic in the entire game, and it's genuinely hilarious the first time you experience it. But here's where the fun stops. Once you actually marry Kosnak, you quickly realize that his drunk character voice type is not a quirky bonus. It's his entire personality. Every line of dialogue sounds like he's 3 ales deep, because he is. The novelty wears off faster than you'd expect. What seemed charming in a tavern becomes exhausting in your living room. Combat-wise, he caps at level 30 with mediocre melee stats. Fine if you marry him early, completely irrelevant by late game. He's not protecting you from anything serious once the difficulty scales past him. The community consensus on Kosnak is pretty much unanimous. The Brawl introduction is one of the most memorable courtship moments in Skyrim. Players genuinely love telling that story. But actually living with him? That's a different conversation entirely. He's the kind of husband who's a great first date and a terrible long-term commitment. But if you think a drunk brawler is a rough pick, wait until we meet a husband whose entire sales pitch is that he owns a used goods store. Revan Sadri. Most husbands in Skyrim ask you to punch someone, fetch an item, or hand over a gold coin. Revan Sadri asks you to commit a crime, and not a cool crime. A weird, premeditated, evidence-planting crime that would hold up in an actual courtroom. Here's the deal. Revan runs Sadri's used wares in Windhelm's Grey Quarter, and he's got a problem. A stolen gold ring has ended up in his inventory, and if anyone finds out, his business is done. So to unlock him as a marriage candidate, you need to complete a quest called That Was Always There, which requires you to take that ring and plant it inside an innocent woman's house to frame her for the theft. Let me say that again. You commit conspiracy and evidence tampering to get a date. This is not a metaphor. This is not subtext. This is the literal quest objective. But here's where it gets interesting. Once you get past the light criminal activity, Revan is actually one of the more mechanically useful husbands in the lower tiers. He's an adept level speech trainer, meaning he can train you up to level 50 in speech. That's genuinely valuable valuable for builds that rely on bartering, persuasion, or intimidation. On top of that, he opens a shop from your home after marriage, generating passive income like a proper small business owner. His personality matches the merchant lifestyle. He's appreciative, but professional. No dramatic love confessions, no poetic declarations, just a guy who's grateful you helped him, and treats the marriage like a solid partnership. Some players find that refreshingly honest. Others find it about as romantic as a tax return. The community stays split on Revan. Half the fan base loves the moral complexity of a courtship built on conspiracy. The other half can't get past the fact that your entire relationship is founded on framing an innocent person. Either way, his trainer utility and shop income put him a clear step above the D-tier options. But if you think Revan's courtship was morally questionable, wait until you meet a husband whose entire existence is defined by being an outsider, scouts many marshes. Nobody talks about this guy. And honestly, that's a crime, because Scouts many marshes might be the most underrated husband in the entire game. He's an Argonian dock worker stationed outside the walls of Windhelm. Not inside, outside, because Windhelm's Nord population won't let Argonians through the gates. He spends his days hauling cargo in the cold, barred from the city he works for, and somehow still maintains a level of quiet dignity that most Skyrim NPCs couldn't dream of. Here's the thing, he's one of only 2 Argonian marriage options in the entire base game, him and Dirkethis. That's it. If you want an Argonian husband specifically, your options begin and end with these 2. For players building Argonian characters or anyone wanting a reptilian partner to match their Histborn Dragonborn, Scouts Many Marshes isn't just a viable pick. He's practically the only alternative. And the courtship? Refreshingly simple. Complete a basic miscellaneous task for him. No crime, no conspiracy, no punching anyone in a bar. Just straightforward good faith work. It's almost suspiciously wholesome compared to some of the other courtship requirements on this list. But here's where he actually earns his spot. Scouts Many Marshes is an adept level light armor trainer, capable of training you up to level 50. For stealth builds, archer builds, or anyone running light armor as their primary defense, that's genuinely valuable utility baked directly into your spouse. You're getting free training sessions every time you walk through your front door. As a follower, his level cap sits at 50 with solid mid-range combat performance. He's not going to carry you through legendary difficulty, but equip him with decent light armor, and he'll hold his own without embarrassing himself. Competent, reliable, exactly what you'd expect from a guy who's spent his whole life working harder than everyone around him for half the recognition. The community quietly loves him. He's never topping anyone's tier list, but players who choose him consistently walk away satisfied. And his outsider status in Windhelm gives him real narrative weight if you engage with the city's racial tension storylines. But if you think Scouts Many Marshes has it rough as an Argonian, wait until you meet the other one on this list, because Dirkethis has problems that make dock work look like a vacation. Dirkethis. Dirkethis is the only Argonian follower in the entire base game. That sounds like it should be a selling point. It's not. Before you can even talk to this guy about following you, you have to rescue him from Darkwater Pass, a Falmer dungeon where he's being held captive. So the very first thing the game tells you about your potential companion is that he got kidnapped by blind cave monsters and couldn't get out on his own. Not exactly the strongest first impression. But here's the thing, the narrative setup implies fragility, and the mechanics confirm it. Dirkethis has a level cap of only 30. That's significantly lower than most comparable followers. At that cap, he's sitting at roughly 340 health points, which is approximately half of what similar level followers carry. Half. You could sneeze on this man in a late game dungeon and he'd be on the floor. His combat focus is archery with a skill of 78, which makes him average at range and genuinely poor in melee. He doesn't excel at either role. He's not a sniper, he's not a tank, he's just sort of there, occasionally firing arrows in the general direction of danger. Now, he does have one unique advantage. Dirkethis is flagged as an essential NPC, meaning he literally cannot die. Sounds great on paper, but in practice, that essential tag actually prevents certain stat-fixing exploits that players use on other followers to boost their effectiveness. So the one thing that should make him useful actually locks you out of making him better. Players who invest the effort in rescuing him consistently report the same thing: disappointment. The community recommends Dirkethis almost exclusively for roleplay purposes. specifically for players who want an Argonian companion but don't want to rely on mods. And that's the real problem. He's the only Argonian follower option in vanilla Skyrim, so if you want a reptilian battle buddy, you're stuck with a guy whose level cap and health scaling make him a liability in any serious fight. No alternatives, no competition, just Durkithus and his middling archery. The game's only Argonian follower is also one of its weakest. That's not a tragedy, but it is genuinely disappointing. Onmund. Welcome to B tier, where the husbands actually start having a personality, and Onmund is the perfect introduction to this tier because he's the definition of genuinely likable guy who doesn't blow you away. Onmund is a Nord apprentice mage studying at the College of Winterhold, which already makes him interesting. A Nord, choosing magic. In a culture that basically treats mages like they have a contagious disease, his entire family disowned his life choices, and that tension is the core of everything that makes Onmund worth talking about. His personal quest, Onmund's request, involves retrieving a family amulet he traded to Enthyr, a shady dealer operating inside the college. And the reason he sold it? Shame. He was so conflicted about choosing magic over his family's warrior traditions that he gave away the one thing connecting him to them. That's a genuinely touching character beat for a game that usually hands you fetch quests with zero emotional weight. Here, the fetch quest actually means something, and that quest is all you need to unlock marriage. No major faction progression, no completing the entire college quest line. Just help the guy get his heirloom back, slap on an amulet of Mara, and you're done. He's one of the most accessible college husbands in the game, but here's where the enthusiasm has to cool down a bit. Mechanically, Onmund is a mage follower capped at level 30, the lowest cap of any college student follower, and he specializes in frost and shock destruction spells. He's competent. He'll throw lightning at things and they'll die, but he offers no master training, no unique abilities, no distinctive combat dialogue that makes you think, wow, I need this guy in my party. He's reliable elemental damage and nothing more. The community calls him the safe college pick, and that's exactly right. He's thematically perfect for mage characters. His backstory adds real emotional dimension, and he'll never let you down. He'll also never surprise you. Onmund is the kind of guy you genuinely enjoy having dinner with, but wouldn't necessarily trust to hold his own in a Dwemer ruin when things get ugly. But if you think safe and emotionally resonant is the ceiling for college mages, wait until you meet the husband who turned arrogance into an art form. Balimund. Balimund is the husband you marry when you're tired of adventurers and just want a man with a stable career. He's a Nord blacksmith running the Scorched Hammer in Riften, and his entire appeal can be summed up in 5 words. This man has a job, and honestly, that's more than most husbands in Skyrim can say. To marry Balimund, you need to complete Stoking the Flames, which involves bringing him fire salts so he can keep his forge running. Alternatively, you can invest in his shop through the Investor perk. Both paths are merchant class interactions. No dragon slaying, no dungeon crawling. You're basically proving you're a reliable business partner, and somehow that's romantic enough to trigger a marriage proposal. Here's the thing, Balimund is not a fighter. His combat ability is completely average, and if you're bringing him into battle expecting fireworks, you're going to be disappointed. He swings a weapon the same way every other generic follower does. Nothing special, nothing memorable. He is not the reason you marry this man. The reason you marry this man is the forge. After marriage, Balimund operates a smithing business from your home. That means improved material access, convenient crafting proximity, and a spouse who actually contributes to your gameplay loop in a tangible way. For players running crafting-heavy builds or settlement-focused playthroughs, this is genuinely valuable. You come home from clearing a dungeon, dump your loot, and your husband is right there ready to help you turn it into something useful. But community reception is completely split down the middle. Players who focus on economy, crafting, or roleplay find real satisfaction in Balimund. He fits their playstyle perfectly. Combat optimizers, though, they look at his stats, shrug, and move on to someone who can actually hold their own in a fight. Balimund is a niche pick, but for the right player, he's exactly what they need. And speaking of husbands who actually know how to swing a weapon, let's talk about someone with significantly more muscle. RGIS, the Bulwark. Now we're crossing into upper B-tier territory, and we're starting with a guy who is genuinely better than most players realize. Argus the Bulwark is the housecarl assigned to you when you become Thane of Markarth. That's it. That's the courtship. The Jarl signs a piece of paper, and suddenly you have a live-in bodyguard who's also eligible for marriage. It's the least romantic origin story in the entire game. Your relationship literally begins with a political appointment, but here's the thing. Ignore how you get him, and look at what you actually get. At level level 50, Argy's has 671 health points. That is the highest health pool of any housecarl in the game. Not close to the highest. The highest. His heavy armor skill sits at 100. His one-handed skill sits at 100. The man is a walking fortress with a sword. The name The Bulwark isn't just flavored text, it's a stat sheet summary. He outperforms Gregor, he outperforms Calder, he outperforms every single housecarl husband option in raw mechanical terms. And it's not even particularly close. So why does nobody talk about him? Because housecarls feel like default options. They're assigned to you. You don't choose them the way you choose to recruit Vilkas or hire Mercurio. There's no quest, no dramatic rescue, no brawl in a tavern. The game just hands him to you like furniture that came with the house. And because of that, players mentally categorize him as generic, boring, a placeholder, which is a mistake. Personality-wise, Argy's is exactly what you'd expect from a career soldier. Direct, utilitarian, not deep, not quirky, but dependable in a way that some players find genuinely appealing. He takes his duties seriously, whether that means guarding your home or following you into a Dwemer ruin. And his dual role as housecarl and spouse creates natural narrative coherence for anyone invested in property ownership or Thane roleplay. He's your appointed protector who became your partner. That actually tracks. Community consensus puts Argy's as the go-to pick for players who want a warrior husband without grinding through an entire faction questline. He's the actually kind of great discovery of the mid-tier, and the 671 health is doing more work than most players ever bother to find out. But if you think raw stats are impressive, wait until you meet someone whose combat utility goes way beyond just being hard to kill. Mercurio, welcome to A-tier, where husbands actually earn their spot. And Mercurio doesn't just earn it, he charges for it. This is the only husband in Skyrim you have to pay before he'll even look at you. 500 gold. That's his price. You walk into the Bee and Barb in Riften, and there he is, an Imperial Destruction mage sitting around waiting for someone to meet his fee. Most husbands require you to complete quests, join factions, or prove yourself through combat. Mercurio requires a transaction. You pay the man his 500 gold, he follows you around, and that hire is literally all it takes to unlock marriage. No fetch quests, no faction reputation, just cold, hard septums. And here's the thing, he's worth every coin. Mercurio's primary weapon is Chain Lightning, and if you've never seen this spell tear through a group of enemies, you're missing out. Chain Lightning doesn't just hit one target, it arcs between them, jumping from body to body, frying everything in a cluster. Draugr lined up in a hallway, cooked, bandits grouped around a campfire, gone. He throws destruction magic like he's personally offended by everything in the room and against anything that conducts electricity. He's absolutely devastated. His level cap sits at 40, which is respectable, but not elite. And like most mage followers, he has one glaring weakness. When his magicka runs dry, he's forced to pull out a weapon and swing it around like a guy who's never held a sword in his life, because he hasn't. He's a mage. Watching Mercurio try to melee fight is genuinely painful. But here's where it gets interesting. Players discovered that if you recruit Mercurio at low levels and hit him with the Wabbajack, the Daedric staff that randomly transforms targets, it can reset his statistics to optimize tiers. This exploit effectively unlocks his full potential regardless of when you find him, and it generated massive community discussion about follower optimization. Personality-wise, Mercurio knows exactly how good he is, and he will tell you, repeatedly. He's arrogant, confident, and genuinely entertaining in a way that humble husbands simply aren't. He doesn't thank you for the opportunity to follow you. He acts like you're lucky he said yes, solid A tier, genuine combat utility, a personality you'll actually remember, and the only husband with an entry fee. But if you think paying 500 gold for a husband is dramatic, wait until you meet the Companions brothers who make you earn their respect through blood. Vilkas. Welcome to S tier. This is where the list gets genuinely exciting, because Vilkas isn't just good at one thing, he's good at everything. The game describes Vilkas as the mind to Farkas's muscle, and unlike most character descriptions in Skyrim, this one actually holds up. Vilkas is the intellectual twin of the Companions, a warrior who engages thoughtfully with the guild's philosophy, respects its legacy, and has real presence in his dialogue. He doesn't just swing a sword and grunt, he thinks about why he's swinging it. But here's the thing, personality alone doesn't get you into S tier. What gets you here is the combination of personality and mechanical dominance, and Vilkas delivers both. Let's talk numbers. followers. At level 50, Vilkas carries 635 health points, putting him among the highest health pools of any follower in the game. His skill spread covers two-handed, heavy armor, block, archery, and one-handed, giving him more combat versatility than most followers who lean on a single weapon type. He can adapt to different engagement ranges instead of just charging in with one strategy. He's not just tougher than most husbands on this list, he's more well-rounded in a fight too. Now let's talk about what really separates him. Vilkas is a master-level two-handed trainer, capable of training you all the way to skill level 90. That alone makes him one of the most mechanically valuable husbands in the entire game for any weapon-focused build. But it gets better. Train with Vilkas, then pickpocket your gold back. Repeat. You now have free skill training to level 90, one of the most powerful economy exploits Skyrim has ever offered. You're essentially married to an infinite skill point machine. And there's one more trick most people miss entirely. A specific questline interaction allows you to recruit an additional companion simultaneously alongside Vilkas, enabling a dual follower setup that shouldn't normally be possible. That's not a mod. That's vanilla Skyrim letting you break its own rules. Marrying him does require completing the entire companion's questline through Glory of the Dead, so he's a reward for genuine investment rather than a shortcut. But that investment pays off massively. The community has debated Vilkas versus Farkas for years, and it always comes down to the same philosophical divide: brains versus brawn, depth versus directness. Both brothers are elite, but Vilkas consistently ranks among the best husbands in the game across forums and tier lists because he offers something almost nobody else on this list achieves: elite combat stats, master-level trainer utility, and an actual personality worth listening to, all in one package. But if you think Vilkas is the definitive answer to the twins' debate, wait until you hear the case for his brother, Farkas. Now let's talk about the other brother, and depending on who you ask, the better one. Farkas matches Vilkas in almost every structural way. Same faction requirements, same questline completion through Glory of the Dead to unlock him as both follower and marriage candidate. Same master-level trainer status, except Farkas covers heavy armor instead of two-handed, training you all the way up to skill level 90. And yes, the same pickpocket exploit works here too. Train heavy armor, pickpocket your gold back. Repeat, free master-level heavy armor training from your own husband. It's a direct mechanical mirror to Vilkas, just in a different specialized domain. At level 50, Farkas reaches 590 health points, with heavy armor and one-handed weapon specialization. That's slightly lower than Vilkas's 635, but let's be real, 590 health is still an absolute tank by Skyrim follower standards. He hits hard, he absorbs damage, and he does not go down easily. But here's where Farkas carves out his own identity, and it goes way beyond numbers. The personality contrast between these two brothers is deliberate and meaningful. Farkas explicitly does not want to be the thinker. He's told you that. He values direct action, honest combat, and straightforward emotional loyalty. Where Vilkas philosophizes about the companion's legacy and questions the nature of their curse, Farkas just wants to fight beside you and make sure you're safe. What he lacks in intellectual complexity, he makes up for in pure sincerity. And for a lot of players, that sincerity hits harder than any poetic dialogue ever could. Then there's the werewolf factor. Farkas's beast form transformation is a genuine combat mechanic that no other marriageable husband in Skyrim can offer. When things get desperate, this man literally turns into a werewolf and starts tearing enemies apart. It's a wildcard element that adds unpredictability and raw power to encounters in a way that spreadsheet comparisons completely fail to capture. Now, the Vilkas versus Farkas debate. This has been going on for years. It's one of the longest-running husband arguments in the entire Skyrim community. Vilkas typically edges ahead in best husband rankings because his personality has more layers, more dialogue depth, more intellectual engagement. But Farkas has an intensely loyal fan base who argue that his emotional directness and physical presence are their own form of depth. And honestly, they're right. Not every form of love needs to be complicated. Sometimes the husband who would walk through a dungeon wall for you without asking a single question is exactly the husband you need. Both brothers are legitimately S tier, but if Vilkas is the husband who challenges you intellectually, Farkas is the husband who would throw himself between you and a dragon without hesitating for even a second. And for the final entry on this list, we're looking at a husband that almost nobody talks about but absolutely should: Halbarn Iron Fur. Okay, so if you've made it this far, you're probably expecting the final entry to be some unstoppable S-tier god of a husband, someone who breaks the game, someone who makes every other candidate on this list look like a waste of time. It's a blacksmith on a volcanic island that most players have never even visited. Halbarn Ironfur is a Nord blacksmith from Thirsk Mead Hall on Solsteam, and he is exclusively available through the Dragonborn DLC. You can't marry him in the base game. You can't even find him in the base game. To unlock Halbarn as a husband, you need to travel to an entirely separate island, complete the Retaking Thirsk questline, help a group of displaced Nords reclaim their mead hall from Reeklings, and then stick around long enough to build a relationship with the guy rebuilding the forge. This is not a husband the game hands you. This is a husband you earn through an entirely separate adventure. And here's the thing. His combat stats are average. His trainer utility is unremarkable. Mechanically, he sits somewhere around Balaman territory, maybe a half step above. He is not the strongest fighter on this list. He is not the most useful follower. He does not break any systems or exploit any loops. So why does he close the list? Because ranking a husband tier list purely on stats misses the entire point of why Skyrim's marriage system exists. Halbarn Ironfur is the husband for players who spent 40, 50, 60 hours on Solstheim, players who rebuilt Thirsk Mead Hall from nothing, players who cleared every dungeon, fought every ash spawn, and turned that frozen volcanic wasteland into something that felt like home. For those players, marrying Halbarn isn't settling for a mid-tier pick. It's choosing someone whose story is woven into the world they actually built. His post-questline commitment to rebuilding the Mead Hall creates a level of settlement integration that Balamand only approximates. He's not just a craftsman you recruited. He's rebuilding an entire Nordic hall alongside you. The community views him as a niche pick, and that's fair. But the players who choose him aren't optimizing. They're role-playing. And for the right character, in the right playthrough, Halbarn is the only husband that makes narrative sense. That's the real thesis of this entire list. Skyrim's marriage system was never really about optimization. It was never about finding the mathematically perfect companion. It was about who you wanted standing in your house when you came home from killing a dragon. Whether that's a street beggar in Windhelm, a werewolf warrior in Whiterun, a sarcastic mage in Riften, or a blacksmith on a volcanic island, the game lets you decide what that relationship means. And that design choice, spread across 35 plus eligible bachelors with wildly different stories, personalities, and mechanical value, is genuinely kind of remarkable. Not every game trusts you with that much freedom. Skyrim always did. If you enjoyed this video and want to see every Skyrim wife explained, click the video on the screen now.